Everybody. So with that, I am going to call to order this October 13th, 2020 Town Council meeting. If everybody could please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and a quick moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, let's get to business. Proclamations. We have proclamations or presentations. We have recognition tonight of Fran Wiegand and the occasion of her retirement from the town of Tolland. Bev, did you want to start with this? And then
I could have written a book after 31 years, but I didn't. On August 15th, 1988, Fran started her position as Senior Center Coordinator. She wrote in her first senior newsletter, "With your help, I hope to make your center a warm and welcome place for all of you." 32 years later, she certainly accomplished her goal and so much more. Fran has often told the story that when she first started, she had a shoebox of supplies that she kept in the trunk of her car and was instructed to create a senior center. The senior center was first located in the former ambulance building behind the town jail, which is now the home to the Tolland Military Museum. Although the space was small, Fran was able to cultivate a dedicated group of seniors and volunteers who were the genesis behind the senior center we see today. Fran had a secret recipe for success. She cared with all her heart. She told the best jokes. She had the gift of music. She could inspire seniors to come out of their comfort zone, as witnessed in the many variety shows. She cooked with the best ingredients. She listened to the seniors and created programs they wanted. She could manage on a limited budget and raise funds with the blink of an eye. She was willing to try her hand at anything, even managing an emergency shelter at the senior center for 7 days in a row. But most importantly, she gave the seniors a sense of purpose, and everyone who walked through the doors felt welcomed and cared for. As programs and responsibilities grew, Fran's hours were increased to full-time, and her title changed to Senior Center Director. In 1997, the Town Council, the Town Manager, and Town staff worked in collaboration to secure grant and town funds to construct a 5,000 square foot senior center. The new senior center opened its doors in February 1999. The budget did not fully provide for equipping the center with furniture and other items that would be necessary to run this program. Fran took on that challenge through donations and fundraising activities. She secured most of all the items you see in the center today. She is truly a remarkable woman. What is also remarkable of Fran is that she created one of the best senior centers in the area, all without social media or Facebook. It has been a true honor to work with Fran for the past 31 years, and she will be missed by so many, especially the staff in Human Services. Thank you, Fran.
So I have had the distinct pleasure of knowing Fran for quite a few years now, not nearly enough. When she first started the senior center, I was a junior in high school. So I remember when it started. I remember when the town was going through the funding to try to get the senior center built, and everything that happened throughout all of that. And I wasn't involved back then. I was young, going off to college and doing all kinds of other good things. But when given the opportunity to go down and talk to Fran, I recognized something in Fran made something in me blossom. When I started talking to the seniors and hanging out with them and doing lunches and that, her dedication level is truly second to none. And not only that, but the love and the caring that she put out there every single time that I was there. She's got a beautiful voice, and she loves to sing. And the chorus and the rubber band and all of the other things that she has done have given our seniors here in Tolland a home away from home. When I'm talking to seniors, all I hear is how much they miss the senior center and how they just want to get back together and how big of a role it played in their lives. And I am truly amazed that Fran was able to do what she did on still, even now, what I would consider a shoestring budget, and the opportunities and the programs that she brought together for our seniors. I don't think that there's another person out there that can do what she did with as much passion, love, and dedication as she did. And Fran, I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for looking out for and taking care of our seniors. I wish you nothing but the best in your adventures going forward. And I know there will be adventures, and you are not going to retire and sit and knit. You will have many more adventures, and I look forward to hearing about all of them. And on behalf of the Tolland Town Council and a longtime resident, I sincerely, with all gratitude, thank you for everything you did to make our senior center what it is and what you have done for our residents. So Fran, thank you very much, and congratulations on your retirement. I hope to see you soon. You are on mute if you want to say anything. You have to unmute.
Let me see if I can help her. Fran, you should have seen a box pop up.
Mute. Now, can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
I'm taken by the beautiful words that both of you have said about me. Bev, I have to say she's been an awesome boss all these years. She gave me the freedom to do what I felt needed to be done. She trusted me. As I said, she's been really wonderful to me. Backed me every inch of the way. Tammy, your words also are beautiful. Sometimes you don't know how you come across to people, but I do want to say in all fairness, no man is an island. So I really did not do this all myself. I had great backing, and again, back to Beverly for the grants that she has written to enable us to have the building that we have today. I just want you to know it was so rewarding, really, being a director there. It was my family, extension of family, I would say. At the age that I took the position, I was 46. So now you all know how old I am. We had sent our kids off to school, the college, and most kids don't return to their homes. They make their own life. And I was a bit lonely, and all of a sudden this job came, and I applied, and I got the job. And again, it's been very rewarding for me. I feel the key ingredients, if you don't mind, is truly love. I love the people. I love what I did. To tell you the truth, I'm only a week and a half into retirement, and I miss it already. I know it's time to move on. I have done the best to my ability to get the senior center where it is today, and I know it's time to pass the baton, and hopefully the next person that comes in will take it and run with it, because it needs to grow and blossom, make it better than it is. I'd be so thrilled to make it better than it is. And for the town council people like Tammy, I could probably be certainly your mother, but maybe even your grandma, depending. It's funny, there's a saying, as you are, so once was I. As I am, so once you'll be. And I think the younger people on the council will then begin to realize the importance of a senior center in a community that, and as you have found out, Tammy, they miss it terribly. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, this COVID, for me, this sounds almost cruel, but it's been a help for me to detach myself from the folks, because I've been forced to leave them. because of the COVID. So it's helped me in a way, but I miss it very, very much. And I don't know what else to say, but thank you for the wonderful words, both Bev and you, Tammy. And no, you probably haven't seen the end of me. I'll probably be around. It's really my life. I feel it was a life of service that I gave, and I'm just blessed that I had the opportunity. And I think the town of Tolland is pretty special. And I want to say to you, Tammy, God bless you, and I wish you all the luck in the world. You're a smart cookie. So I hope that you continue to fly. Yeah.
Thank
I
you.
don't know what to say, but, oh, one other thing. It's so funny. I was saying to my husband the other day, I said, I look back and the number of town managers that I've been through, town council people that I've been through, and I started to number them. I think the first one was Stu Jocelyn. I think he was the chairperson. That goes really way back. And there was Kathy Bach, there was Dick Richfield, and there was Jack Scafone, not to mention the managers, So yeah, I go back a long way. Holy.
I was literally in high school.
Yeah, I know. But it's good. And again, I hope that the town council and the councils after you folks will continue to help build that senior center, because it needs to grow and it needs to blossom. So if I can help you, Tammy, in any way, I will too.
Thank you.
Yeah. So thank you for the opportunity and the beautiful words. So.
Well, I see there are a bunch of other people on here that have worked with you in the past. I don't know if anybody else would like to say anything briefly. John just unmuted, so.
Yeah, Tammy, if I could say a few words.
Hi.
Fran's going to be definitely missed. She let us and my department in the senior center. I think we started the first senior center Christmas parties right when I took over in 2000, and we've been treated like family down there, and she's done an amazing job, and it's helped us build a better relationship with the seniors and the elderly population in town, and has just strengthened us more. So she's going to be definitely missed, and she's held a special place in my heart with my family. So she's done a lot for me, and she's almost been pretty much a second mother to me, or family to me. So she's always been supportive and everything else. And it's going to be hard to replace your shoes, Fran. I tell you, there's a lot of us that are touched, and we're going to truly miss you. But I want you to know that you are always welcome in Tolland, and you will always be family here. And we hope to see you soon again. Thank you for everything.
Thank you. Thank you very much, John. Your group meant a lot to me, truly. And I like the fact that you stepped up to the plate and did those dinners for us, because just like you said, it enabled you to get involved more with the seniors. And I felt if in an emergency, they wouldn't be so nervous because they could connect a familiar face. And that's what you did. So I appreciate that on behalf of the seniors. That was really a big plus. So yeah, I enjoyed you too. You're a great guy. Thank you. Back to you.
Hi, Fran. It's Mike. How are you?
Yeah. Good. How are you?
Good. I know we only worked together for a year, but I just wanted to echo everyone's thanks as well. I think you were a phenomenal senior center director. Unfortunately, our time together was short and also cut in half by COVID, but I think the programming and that you've done and that I witnessed at the lunches, and I remember I had written in your card that my first and best memory was being your audience for the Christmas carols that you and Becky were singing. I was so in the library, so I'll always have that memory. It means a lot to me as well. And I wanted to thank you for your many years of service, although we only overlapped for one of them, but I wanted to wish you well in your retirement, Fran.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I didn't have a chance to pester you at all. In all fairness, I want to give kudos also to my coworker, Becky, who has helped me for the last 20 years. And I know the fire department called us the dream team because we worked together a lot. And I also give her some credit because she helped me do many of the things that we didn't have an assistant. So maybe it's time for an assistant. So we'll see. But I just want to give her also some credit.
I've heard you two called quite a few different things. The Dream Team,
Yeah.
Thelma and Louise, Frickin' Frack, you know. They always seem to know who they're talking about when they say it too.
Yeah, it was a good run. It was really a good run. Yeah.
Well, Fran, you don't have to stay on for the rest of our town council meeting here, but I'll definitely be in touch, as I'm sure other people will. And I thank you again from the bottom of my heart for coming today and for everything that you have done for Tolland.
Well, thank you very much. My pleasure. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Mwah.
Thank you. Yeah, gotcha.
Okay, that gets us to 4.2, future proclamation requests.
So good evening, councilors. It's Mike Rosen, town manager speaking. This is the first time actually we've had this item on our agenda for future proclamation requests. If you remember back in June, we had talked about the creation of a proclamation policy for the council. And in that meeting, what was decided was that there would be 4 sort of standard proclamations that wouldn't need further vetting. Those 4 would be a resident's 100th birthday, recognition of a retiring employee, such as Fran, although we did it a little bit differently tonight, civic organization recognition, or for Fair Housing Month that we do every year. Any other proclamations besides those 4 would have a word form on the town website that requests can be submitted. And then we bring that request to the council to consider to do a proclamation for the future. So what I'm here tonight to tell you is that we've gotten 2 requests for 2 different proclamations that don't fit our standard 4. And I know we do have a bit of a lengthy agenda tonight, so hopefully we don't spend too long on this, but I wanted to mention that one proclamation came in requesting recognition for Veterans Day in November. And the other proclamation is in honor of a resident who performed a heroic deed and is going to be awarded the Carnegie Medal for an extraordinary act of heroism. The town council was informed of this through an email that came through in September. What we're thinking is a proclamation could be issued in conjunction with the actual award ceremony for this gentleman. But because both this and the Veterans Day recognition are not part of our standard 4, I needed to bring it to council, and that's what I have for you tonight.
Okay, so with this process, for that second one, I know there is going to be a medal ceremony. I'll be presenting him with the medal and everything. I don't know if it makes sense to, I think I agree with you that we should hold, I don't know if we can approve it now and just wait until the ceremony is. They're going to let us know when they're actually able to send the medal and all of the other recognition information, so then we can figure out a way to do that presentation. So do we just go through, talk about these and approve them tonight, and then we can actually issue that?
Well,
we do that.
We could certainly talk it through a little bit longer. I mean, what I think we're looking for tonight is direction as staff to start to put together some of the whereas language that would normally go into a proclamation. So if there is general consensus among the council that you would like us to start doing that for these 2 ideas, we could bring it to a future council meeting for actual approval. The language having to do with the heroic act was, some of it was provided to us from the Carnegie Medal Association, so we would borrow that language for the proclamation. The other item is Veterans Day, specifically requesting a proclamation recognizing all veterans past and present who have resided in the town of Tolland, to be issued to the Veterans Recognition Committee. So that's something that's a little bit more timely, because Veterans Day does come up in about a month from now.
Okay, so does anybody want to go through? We can talk about let's do Veterans Day first. Does anybody have anything they want to talk about with Veterans Day? Are you okay with everybody going forward to pull together language so we can get something on for, that'd be what, the second meeting? First meeting?
The first meeting is the day before Veterans Day.
Yeah.
Veterans Day is on a Wednesday this year.
Okay, so it'd be for the first meeting of November. Do you have anything, Steve?
I was going to say I'm in favor of that, so I'm good with that to go forward and have language drafted.
Okay. Lou?
Madam Chair, yeah, this was actually one of the issues brought up on in a prior meeting. I made that proposal for the proclamation that I'd be working with Mr. Rosen and the staff there to draft the whereas language for some of the other proclamation and recognitions and get the appropriate language. The main intent for it is to recognize all all veterans past and present within the town of Tolland, and that we will to get a full list of people added to the proclamation, and then move forward. It'd be my intent with the council's agreement is to make it basically a yearly proclamation where we'd update it for any new veterans that within the town of Tolland, so that we have a constantly going list as part of this proclamation. Thank you.
Okay. So Mike, did you get that? So the recognition for all veterans past and present with a full list, and then something that we can just maintain going forward to add to as needed?
Yeah, my understanding is that there would be a proclamation that would be issued yearly, but that would have a side list of all the past. We would continue to update it as veterans moved into town. That's what my understanding of Councilor Luba's request is.
Okay.
Yeah, you're right.
So can we have to vote on this. So that's can we vote in this section? Proclamations and presentations?
That was the process that we set on June 9th, that we would approve that we would let the staff draft it. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So then I'm going to go around. Everybody who's in favor, Brenda?
Aye.
Cassandra?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Lou?
Aye.
Kurt?
Aye.
I'm an aye, so that one is unanimous. Okay, and then the last one is the proclamation and recognition of the resident who's receiving the Carnegie Medal. Does anybody have any questions or any input on this one? There will be a formal presentation of the medal and all the regalia that comes along with the Carnegie. So we're gonna have to just figure out, Mike, how we do that.
Yes.
They weren't sure when they were gonna have it to us, so the
Right.
when.
We were waiting to hear from Carnegie about that. Yes.
Yes. Okay, so I don't see anybody have any discussion. So all those in favor, Brenda?
Aye.
Cassandra?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Lou?
Aye.
Kurt?
Aye.
And I'm an aye, so that passes unanimously. So
Thank you.
I would say go ahead and start the draft information on those two.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we get to public petitions, communications, and public participation. Any subject within the jurisdiction of the town council with a 2-minute limit. If you would like to speak, please, if you are on a device, raise your hand in the participants area. If you are on a phone, it is *9. After you do that and I call on you, please state your name and address for the record. Lindsay.
Hello. My name is Lindsay Summerzaki, 127 Anthony Road. I just wanted to bring to all of your attention that I'm very concerned because there are many signs on people's public or private property, including my own, that have been stolen and run over. So, for example, several Black Lives Matter signs have been stolen off people's property or run over. I think, in my opinion, this climate in town, makes people feel safe to do those types of things. I'm not sure what action the town council can take, like, immediately, as far as maybe speaking, I don't know if you can make some kind of statement. I know a lot of you are active on Facebook. You make many comments. So of course there's something, you can even say or do, but I don't know if there's something even if you're in touch with like the police or something, just kind of like doing something to condemn these, of course, a sign being stolen, that's theft. But I think the fact that it's Black Lives Matter signs makes it, puts a little more at stake. It's not a political sign. It's not a political statement. And I'm just concerned that the climate in this town makes, not saying necessarily supports, but makes people feel safe enough to be able to do that. All of you on the town council, you're responsible for creating policies, and some of those policies may make people feel safe to do these types of things. Of course, on the Board of Ed, not changing Columbus Day to Indigenous Peoples Day on the calendar, those are things that make people feel safe enough to do these, terrible things, like stealing and running over signs. So I also want to thank the library, and I forgot who else, for putting on the presentation about inclusion and diversity. I wish I saw more of you there. Hopefully at that next upcoming event, put on, I can't remember what it's called, but it's about, racism. I hope more of you will be there. And actually listening and not doing other things like stuffing envelopes. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, then we're going on to 6 public hearing items. Consideration and action concerning a resolution to amend a resolution adopted on July 9th, 2019 for the financing of the purchase of a fire rescue truck.
Good evening, everybody. Mike Rosen, Town Manager. I'll get us started, and potentially we'll ask John for input depending on where this goes. But so this is what is several months in the making to be here tonight for the funding of the fire rescue truck, also known as a squad vehicle, that was originally funded 2 fiscal years ago for this past fiscal year that just completed, for a fire rescue truck, which is a piece of equipment that is similar to a full-size fire truck. It's a little bit less in size-wise, but it does have a pumper on it. It's also sort of an agile vehicle that has some a lot of tools on it. It can get into places that are harder to reach than like sort of through forests and trails and things like that. So it's an apparatus that had gone through our capital budgeting process and was funded originally using bond authorization money. But the actual purchase of the vehicle had been put on hold for multiple reasons. One was COVID-19, but also while the funding source was sort of hashed out, it was not ordered. But we talked about it over several meetings, and the council first considered using all cash to buy it rather than bonding it. That about a month ago, that did not go through. Instead, sort of a compromise approach went through that we would potentially use $400,000 worth of cash and up to $350,000 worth of bond authorizations to pay for the $750,000 truck, give or take, price-wise. And meanwhile, the chief Lytle would do the due diligence required to actually go ahead and get the bid specs together, see other vendors, they have these like demo days where they go out and take a look at the trucks, or the trucks will come to Tolland, and John and his staff, as well as the volunteer staff, will get a chance to take a look at it. And that has all happened now, except for, I think, John, there's one more demo that you're waiting for. So where we're at tonight, as we stand, we're about to have the public hearing specifically on funding this truck, which has already been, again, the merits of the truck have already been talked about many years now. We just want to talk about how we're going to fund this truck. Specifically tonight, we're talking about $400,000 worth of cash out of our general fund and up to $350,000 of bonded money to make up the difference. And maybe while we're talking, we can talk about sort of where the prices are at the moment. And I also want to report, this is important for our discussion, that John is at the point where bid specs are prepared. We know what type of truck, we know the manufacturers that are out there. John's done some good pricing around. Like I said, I think there might be one more demonstration that's outstanding, but ideally, if this passes tonight at public hearing, we could sit down tomorrow, John, Lisa, and I, and actually go ahead and purchase the truck. So we're at that phase now where we're really ready to do this. So that's why we want to make sure that all of our ducks are in a row. We have our funding sources dotted and crossed, and we're looking forward to a good discussion tonight on this. Thanks.
Okay, with that intro, I think we'll probably just go ahead and open up the public hearing, and then we can discuss. So,
I entertain a motion to open the public hearing.
This is Brenda Felucci. I second.
all those in favor? Oh, any discussion? All those in favor? Brenda?
Aye.
Cassandra? Yep.
Sorry, aye.
Steve?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Lou?
Aye.
Kurt?
Aye.
I'm an aye, so the public hearing is open. If you have something you would like to say at the public hearing, this is the same process. If you're on a device, please go to the participants and raise your blue hand. If you are on the phone, you can hit *9. We will call on you in order, and when you are called on, please state your name and address for the record. Okay, I am not seeing anybody.
All right, so seeing none, Madam Chair, I entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
This is Brenda
Second.
Felucci. I second.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor? Brenda?
Aye.
Cassandra?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Lou?
Aye.
Kurt?
Aye.
I have an aye, so the public hearing is now closed. Okay, that gets back to us then. If you want to make a motion, Steve, we can have discussion.
All right, so I'd be entertaining a motion that now therefore be it resolved that the Tolland Town Council hereby amends the original resolution such that the $750,000 appropriation approved thereunder be financed with the use of general fund unassigned fund balance in an amount not to exceed $400,000 and the issuance of bonds or notes in the amount not to exceed $350,000. And 2, that the appropriation approved by the original resolution and all other terms of the original resolution, except as amended, hereby shall remain in full force and effect. Approved on October 13th, 2020.
Lou Wall, second.
Okay, discussion, anybody? Steve?
Yeah, Steve Jones. So I'm in favor of the truck. We just need it. It's very clear. I've struggled with whether I'm going to vote yes or no on this, especially after asking a few questions from Lisa. The one line that really hit me was just the lack of comfortability using funds during uncertain times and the issues with state revenue in future years. But that being said, it did seem as though the reduction was more palatable and that our ideal interest rate that we just kind of locked in is going to help us out in future years. And it does feel a little bit more towards a compromise of, I think, where we were headed. I wish we had probably had more of a 60-40 on the bond side versus the general fund, but I want the truck to move forward. I want the ink on the pen, so I'm willing to vote in favor of this to move it forward, but just with reservations about the split.
Appreciate that. Brenda?
Hi, yes, Brenda Felucci. I took a look back in all of our meeting minutes going back over 10 years. We have a long history of discussing purchasing large vehicles with taking a look at using fund balance, bonding, CNRE funds, general funds in any combos or non-referendum bond notes. And looking back at all of our history, both the town manager, our previous town manager, and our town councils never felt comfortable if our unassigned fund balance was below 12%. They wanted to have that flexibility to respond to, in case there was another emergency, in case we needed to purchase another truck, in case something else came up. So I want this truck purchased. I want us to move forward. This process is not holding that up. We've already approved the purchase of this truck. During the middle of a pandemic, and we have an uncertain future and an uncertain idea about what our fiscal liabilities are going to be. I would prefer that we bond for the truck as approved and have the flexibility of having cash on hand to respond to the emergency that we're in.
Thank you. Lou?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Lou Luba. I think that Councilman Jones put it very succinctly, that this is something that's been a long time coming, that we need to move forward on this. Not haven't been able to, that the town has been forward with this issue since last year when the bond was originally approved, and now it's a matter of working out the finances, but been an issue where we haven't been able to go forward. I think that this is something that we fully discussed the last meeting. If anything, this shows the flexibility and the thoughtfulness of the town council, where that there was was put forward on the last meeting when we discussed that there was discussion. On that discussion, that the town council reiterated. So I think that that this shows that are listening to our constituents, their concerns, taking into consideration what is best for the town. And I think that this is something that that we should move today. And I'm hoping that we can approve and move forward so that we can put this, move forward with the purchase and taking care of our town.
Thank you, Lou. Anybody else? No? All right, then with that, we'll go around. All those in favor. Brenda?
Nay.
Steve? Cassandra?
Yeah, yes. Sorry.
Steve?
Yay? Nay.
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Lou?
Aye.
Kurt?
Aye.
And I am an aye, so that passes 6-1. All right, reports of boards and committees responsible to the council. Brenda, do you have anything for us tonight?
Yes. So, I'm sorry, I was looking for my notes. And I seem to have lost them, but I will do that from memory. First, for the Central Regional Tourism Commission, Tolland has created a Tolland tourism page. I encourage everybody to go and like and share it. We are highlighting any event or program that can attract people from our area to any of the events that are uniquely Tolland. So if hiking trails during the fall, musical events that may come up, even if they're online. The restaurants that we have in the area, especially for families traveling to and from Yukon. Anything that we can do to attract a wider audience for our businesses, tourism, and hospitality is going to be very beneficial for us. So I started populating this page, was it 2 weeks ago now, Mike? I think it was. It's going to take probably a month or more to get the rest of the content up there. There are advantages to spacing it out a little bit and starting to build momentum. I think we had about 150 people who like the page so far. We want to get a wider audience. We want this to be regional. So Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, New York, we'd like to be able to see some people liking this page. So if you have the opportunity, please share, like, and interact. It helps with the formulas that happen in social media. It would be greatly appreciated for our businesses and for our town. It's going to help the local economy, and it's going to help us recover better. The other report I have is with Sustainable CT. We had a meeting last week with the Sustainable CT group. Mike Rosen was the one who initiated that, I believe. And it looks to me if they have loosened up a little bit of their requirements, and we'll have more opportunity to be able to get some points than we had previously. So we're going to have a sustainable CT at our next meeting. So I'll reserve most of the information for that meeting so that it's all concise in one location. But I was very encouraged by the news that we had heard and moving forward with this program. I think it's a step forward for Tolland in making us a sustainable and attractive town to both businesses and residents.
Okay.
So,
is that it? You're good?
yes.
Okay.
I just had one question, sorry, Madam Chair,
Sure.
for Councilor Lucy, Steve Jones here. I was wondering, with the latest news about the census, is there any more complete count meetings, or is there any change to that structure for the last, I think it goes until the 31st, or is it pretty much just at the wrap-up point, final push?
We are pretty much wrapped up. We did not have another meeting, but I have been sharing information, trying to get more people registered. I think Tolland was at 84% the last time I looked. And speaking with our contact, she said that we did a phenomenal job. People can still reply to the census. We don't have any other meetings scheduled. I know at some point we're going to probably do a wrap-up. We should receive, all the data for the census has to be reported to the federal government by December 31st, and we should start receiving some detailed reports after the first of the year. And, you know, we haven't talked about having another meeting or dissolving the commission. I think we wait and see. My recommendation would be to wait and see what information we get and see if there's anything we want to do as a commission to disseminate that information to the town.
Okay, thank you.
I hope.
Lou?
Madam Chair, for a moment, I just want to address one of the issues that Councilman Pelosi brought up. Brenda, that there was actually a court ruling today, Supreme Court, where the time frame has been moved up for the census, where it needs to be before even before the end of October. So that's something that just came out a few hours ago.
Right.
That may affect the time frame.
Yeah, that's gone back and forth, I think, twice. So, yeah, it is what it is.
Thank you. I just want to check to make sure.
Okay, that gets us to 7B, reports of town council liaisons. Back to you, Brenda.
Okay.
You just happen to sit in that seat now, you know, so it goes right back to you.
I know, and like I said, I lost my sheet, but let's see. Blight did not meet. Land acquisition has not met. Planning and zoning had one meeting in which the discussion for changing in allowing drive-throughs was continued. The changes for chickens and other fowl, I think it wasn't just chickens, I think it included other fowl too, was approved. So there's going to be changes with the size of your lot, how many chickens you can have on the lot, setbacks, things like that. So that's something that the Ag Commission and Planning and Zoning worked together. Planning and Zoning also added a couple meetings because they have a couple Mondays that had holidays. Both just yesterday was a holiday that they'd normally have a meeting, and then Veterans Day is also a holiday that they normally have a meeting. So they added 2 meetings to their schedule so that they can address the items like the drive-throughs and other changes that they're proposing to their zoning regulations. And I think that's it.
Okay, Cassandra?
The PCC, or that one didn't meet. The Permanent Celebration Committee.
There you go.
Didn't meet.
Okay. Steve?
Yeah, Steve Jones. So the Conservation Commission met twice since our last meeting. The first was on the 24th. This was actually a their first, I think, since COVID lockdown restrictions. They had it in person at the Campbell Conservation Area. Joe Mateus from the Ag Commission, as well as Jack Yergel, who's the lessee of the Campbell Farm, were in attendance. There was some really good discussion about their working relationship and trying to associate agriculture with open space and conservation of open space in the town. The Halloween hike, due to CDC and DPH guidelines, has been kind of altered to be more of a Halloween alternative. It won't be the same costume event I probably brought forward previously. It'll be more kind of a full moon hike style event like was previously held on Sage Meadow, and I think the full moon hike that was held there in the winter time. There will be a Wannet design implementation subcommittee for Ben Christensen, and Peggy Webb will be helping run that, and Bob Rubino as well, to assist with the design and implementation and phase out of that area. And then on October 8th, they set up the flyer, which I think is going to be posted on social media and the town e-blast. There was a report on the Conservation Corps that the stargazing event was really well managed. There's still ongoing work with Paul Hill Park, the mountain bike park. And there were a couple of incidences on trails, including I think Parsiac and Wannet, where motorized vehicles were illegally used. One incident resulting in the injury of a resident. So they're looking at ways to try and improve that and stay in touch with public safety and the police department in terms of reporting those incidences, as well as checking on no trespassing signs that may actually be within the property boundaries of conservation areas. So there'll be some activity there, just reviewing some guidelines and some property boundaries. And I believe that should summarize it. It is Walktober, so if you're out and about, there's plenty of trails to go walk on. I don't think there's a formally organized Walktober event in Tolland other than the Halloween alternative hike. And that wraps up for me.
That's it for you. Okay, then that gets us to John.
Nothing to report this week. WPCA did not meet.
Okay, Lou?
Chair, the Birch Grove Building Committee did meet that there was several issues that were discussed, that the building is coming along beautifully, that they working on the exterior now. I believe at this point they'll have it all dried out, so have it dried in, so it'd be that start working in the interior, to start putting up interior walls and the exterior with the exterior facing. Several change orders that were processed of huge significance, but move along the biggest issue that we had was the funding, where the 100% of the unspoils were being funded. That I believe at this point we're still waiting for the signature by the governor on that, and that hopefully once he says that, then we can move forward with the other things that we put on hold, so that we can get everything finalized and move forward. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. Kurt?
Thank you, Chairwoman Nuccio. Both Parks and Recreation and the Agricultural Commission met on October 5th, Monday, October 5th. Unfortunately, I had a prior engagement, so I was unable to make either one of those meetings, so I'll refer you to the minutes.
Okay. For me, the Board of Ed met. They had also had their goal setting meeting. Those minutes hopefully should be coming out soon, so everybody can see what they ended up with their goals. It was a good meeting, long meeting, but good. And also the community conversations should be starting soon. They were supposed to have one in October, but I think the goal setting meeting kind of bumped that. So we should be on the lookout for those conversations if you would like to attend those. I had an EDC meeting, and we talked more about the program for Tolland Bucks, what the town could and could not do, especially legally. And then we also talked about getting some information on a prior position that the town had, which was the Economic Development Officer. We no longer have that position. It was deemed that it was not, I don't know, the position was just let go. So we're looking into some history on that. And Mike, was there anything else big at EDC?
No, that covered most of what we spoke about.
Okay. And that is it for me. So that gets us to 8.1, new business. Annual meeting of the Tolland Public Library Foundation to discuss the foundation directors' 2019-2020 accomplishments, 2020-2021 goals, and the 2020-2021 approved budget, as well as overview of the foundation activities over the last year. I believe we have Linda with us to discuss that. Mike, do you want to start?
Yeah, sure. I think I was going to say Linda may have just logged off accidentally, so hopefully she comes back on in a moment. I can just get us started by saying that this is an annual item that the council considers this time every year. The bylaws of the foundation specify that the council oversees the Library Foundation, Public Library Foundation Incorporated, and appoints its board of directors to carry out their activities. And Linda Byam is the president of the board of directors. I think she wants to dive a little bit more into the memo she had written. And then later on in our agenda, under vacancies, we're going to actually reappoint people who have their terms are up. So that's later on. I'm not sure if Linda has rejoined us.
I have not seen her yet, so give her a minute
sure.
to re-put everything in.
If worst case scenario, if Linda can't join us, her memo is in the packet.
It's very detailed.
Yeah, we can talk through maybe some of the accomplishments. I know Barbara's here as well. Maybe she can pinch hit.
I was just going to add to, just to give some filler time, that the town did recently hire the new children's librarian. Andrew, I believe Geary is their name. I actually happened to stop by today and welcomed him to town and said hello. He's very friendly. You know, he reached out to me first. I was checking out books digitally and just happened to say hi. And he was very approachable, was wearing a Toy Story mask. You know, I thought of with Andy, I wanted to make a joke about whether or not, you know, when he goes into a room, do all the toys fall down? But he's definitely a great, energizing personality. So just welcome him to the town as the new children's librarian.
Thank you, Steve. We were very impressed with Andy as well. Linda, we were actually just going through the memo a little bit. We wanted to introduce you as the president of the board of directors. So feel free to unmute yourself and go through the memo.
Welcome, Linda.
Okay, thanks. Sorry about that, guys. I've been listening to the meeting, and literally when Steve was talking, my internet died. So, sorry about that. But I'm back. My tech support, thankfully, was home. And
the land of Zoom meetings.
Yeah, I know. So anyways, you guys have the memo that I wrote. Thank you, Chairwoman Nuccio and Vice Chairman Jones, for having me come to the meeting again tonight. Every October, on the second Tuesday of October, we have a meeting of the members of the Library Foundation, which are the town council members, and the members of the board of directors, of which I'm the president. So it's our annual meeting, and we use this time to present any outstanding directors that we have, our accomplishments, our goals, and our budget. So you have the meeting. I know you guys, like you said, you have a lengthy agenda. I won't take a lot of time, but I do want to just highlight a few things and then give you the opportunity to ask questions if you have any about, you know, anything that you have about the Library Foundation. So regarding our foundation directors, we have Kate Farish, Kristen Morgan, Jan Rubino, and Danny Titterton, who have terms that are expiring this year and that have requested to be reappointed. So currently we have no vacancies on our board right now. We have some very long-standing members, and thankfully we haven't had a lot of turnover. So we're lucky in that respect. So regarding our accomplishments this past year, for 2019-2020, for the past year, we have provided funding for Hoopla, which many of you may have taken advantage of. It's a streaming service for ebooks and other digital materials that are available to all patrons. You can log out those books, and there's a cost associated with each book, but it's free to the patron, but the library is paying for it, and we funded $4,000 towards that subscription cost. We've also purchased 3 laptops for the library staff and 14 Windows license upgrades for the public access and circulation computers. And I just put a note on those 2 purchases because typically most of the money that the foundation has in an endowment is in an endowment with restrictions on it. And those restrictions are not to be used for staff or capital expenditures and so on. So we have to, we're required to follow those restrictions. We do have some unrestricted funds, much less of those. So we were able to use those unrestricted funds to purchase those, understanding that the foundation doesn't typically exist to purchase those types of staff computers and public use computers, but we did so, and other things that the staff needs to do their job, but we did it as a response, you know, from a request from Barbara, because the budget was such that she needed these items, and so we funded those. We also purchased a Zoom license for the library because they needed that to have meetings. I think at least once or twice we tried to have a meeting and couldn't when we wanted to because the town Zooms weren't available. And we also continued to fund some of the databases and the online subscriptions, including Ancestry.com, Job Now, Event Keeper, and Tumble Books, which I think are more popular more than ever because of the digital nature of people needing online resources. We've also, prior to the shutdown for COVID, we started our 10th season of our very popular author series with 2 authors in January and February. And we're considering doing some type of virtual meetings in the future, but we don't have any on the agenda at this point. We maintain our website. We try to maintain a profile in terms of third-party donors like United Way, Truist, Amazon Smile. So we continue to have people donate through those avenues. So we have a steady stream of income that we have every annually. So the rest of the accomplishments, I'm not going to speak to detail of, but basically we're working along with Barbara Pettijohn, the library director, and her vision of the library. And as it becomes a really contemporary community hub, we work to fund her goals and her initiatives to get the library to be an enhanced version of what the town can provide. So our goals for 2020, 2021 are to continue to provide those focus grants and improve our awareness, so people are more aware to not only just donate through their employer and make donations, but also to hopefully be the recipient of additional bequests, because that is where the significant amount of endowment money has come from, is through our bequests, and through planned giving. So we want to continue to raise the awareness of our organization as a recipient of that planned giving. Also exciting is the Tolland Oral History Project is going to be exploring the lives of the residents of our towns and bringing their stories to life through digital media and public performance. We have somebody who has extensive experience in this on our board now. And so look for that initiative to be starting this year and moving forward. The budget for our upcoming year is included in this memo. And I think that is about it. I'm happy to answer any questions that any of the members of the council have about the foundation. But I'd also like to thank Steve Jones, because he is our liaison and he's been attending our meetings. And he really listens to what's going on, and he participates, and he's got some great suggestions. So I'd just like to thank Steve too for participating. He's a great addition to our board as a liaison.
Okay, if anybody has anything that they would like to ask, please raise your hand. In the meantime, Linda, you said something that I did not know, what I find is very interesting. So you guys are listed on the Amazon Smiles.
Yes.
And I know my employer does a matching donation thing. I did not realize that that you guys took part in that. So is there anything else besides, like, and first of all, how do we find you on Amazon Smiles? And then are there any other programs that you're aware of that we can publicize that people can just do their regular stuff and donate to the library?
Great question. United Way also, we have a specific agency number for United Way. We have our tax ID code, and that's all on our website. I should have it off the top of my head, but I don't.
That's all right.
now.
If you want to send it later, that's perfectly
Yep,
fine.
I can do that. And yep, I'll send you a paragraph of information that will tell, how people can donate through, those third parties. Like I said, Truist, Benevity, United Way, Amazon Smile.
Okay, great. I appreciate that because I did not even know you could be
Yeah.
selected.
See, I guess we have to do more awareness raising.
Well, it's an easy one. I'm an Amazon, I get stuff there every month. So
Yeah.
that's an easy one to kind of do. Brenda.
More of comments and huge amount of thanks for everything that you and your board does for our community. First, thank you for being so forward thinking and helping our library be more than just books on shelves. For all the different programs that you add, for the vibrancy that you add to our community through all of your programs, it's really appreciated. I'm very excited about the oral history program. I'm looking forward to seeing that and being able to have our history documented in such a way. And, again, thanks. I just wanted to make a note that I am concerned to hear that we needed to rely on you, and thank you for providing tools that our town employees need that are necessary to do their jobs. I'm hoping that we can look in future budgets, take a look at this and recognize the importance of providing these ourselves for our own employees instead of having to rely on maybe the generosity of a foundation such as yours. Like you said, your money can be restricted. So I don't think we should be relying on this in future years. But again, thank you for everything you do. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Welcome.
Sorry, that's why I was on mute. Steve?
Okay, yeah, you can mute if you want. I can speak a little bit. So, I was going to send the same kudos over and thank you for the kind words. I was going to add, I think Truist, is that the name of the organization that does the donations through Facebook? Because I know that's one way, Chairwoman Nuccio, you can set up a Facebook birthday or in general fundraiser to benefit the Tolland Public Library Foundation.
I know it's one of those third-party ones. Just so people, Steve had a birthday fundraiser, and he set it up on Facebook, and the money, over $400 that he raised, went to the Library Foundation. So yes, that's one of those foundations.
Okay, and then I was going to add just this, not a recommendation, but just something that I just thought of too is now that we have a library or a senior center director retiring, but still wants to remain active and has probably a really strong wealth of engagement with a lot of longtime residents, they may be a solid resource to get in touch and kind of get that past history, that oral history of longstanding still with us residents.
That's a good point, and we are working with the Historical Society as well to do that, but I'll make they touch base with Fran. And just as an aside, we have talked in the past, a couple of years ago, we really talked and delved into the whole idea of like bridging that digital divide. And one of the areas was to reach out to the seniors and to really talk, about how, and I think everybody's kind of been brought up to speed a lot faster than we had anticipated, but, we have reached out and done some things in conjunction with the senior center also. But that's a great idea to make sure that we touch base with them. I'm sure that's included in the plan, but thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you.
Anybody else? No? Well, Linda, thank you very much. I look forward to getting that email and then we can share that. And I did put down the Facebook birthday giving also as an option, because I think that those are all easy things that people can do that can help the library.
Yeah.
And and thank you for helping to also fund the program that we just had, the community talk. That was
great program. Yeah, it was. Barbara, we as well as the foundation split it. So I mean, sorry, the foundation and the Friends both paid for that. So yeah, I thought it was a worthy program. So I was happy to.
It was very good.
Happy to do that.
Yes. All right. Well, then I don't think you need to stay on any longer either. We're like ticking everybody off here, like one at a time. We're moving through this. But thank you again for your presentation, and I look forward to the information.
Okay, great. Have a good meeting. Thank you.
You too.
Have a good night, Linda. Take
Bye.
care.
Thanks. Okay, that gets us to 8-2, discussion of Eversource's storm preparation.
Okay, let me get, sorry, my thing just popped off here. Hi, everybody, Mike Rosen, Town Manager. I just wanted to, first of all, introduce our two Eversource representatives who are here tonight. We have Jonathan Ferrigno, who's our Community Liaison Representative from Eversource. And we also have Bear Lebanji. Hopefully I pronounced that right, Bear. I'm sorry if I didn't. She's Eversource's arborist. And this is on the agenda tonight as a sort of direct answer to the request from the council to have Eversource come and talk a little bit about storm preparation and emergency response. It's sort of the echo from last week's special meeting we had where the town staff came and did the same thing. So we wanted to let Jonathan and Bear talk a little bit, give a presentation, which I'm going to actually make Jonathan the co-host for the time being so he can share his screen and go through the presentation. And then afterwards, certainly we have time for question and answer. So Jonathan, let me make you a co-host. And if there's anything you want to say to get us started, go ahead.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. And good evening, Madam Chair and the rest of the council members. We appreciate you taking the time and letting us have the opportunity to come before you. We have a couple very brief PowerPoint presentations. The first one I'll go through very quickly, and that's more having to do with our storm response, what we do to prepare for these events. I'll give you some specific statewide statistics on this last tropical storm, Isaias, and then a couple tools that we are in the development stages of, try to better our communications during storms and our response. And then my colleague Bear's been nice enough to join, and she has a presentation. Again, it'll be brief on some tree trimming, the types of trimming that Eversource does, as well as the schedule in town. And then we'll both we can answer any specific questions that you have.
Sure. Jonathan, can I interrupt you for 1 second? I just want to ask a request. Mike Wilkinson, I think you're on using the Tolland Zoom account. I think you somehow got the host. Could you give a co-host to Jonathan, please, if you're there? I don't know if
he is listed.
Yeah, I don't know, Mike, if you have.
Can I as a co-host?
No, somehow Mike swooped in and took the host.
Can I just share my screen? I have an option.
I think it's going to tell you only hosts are able to do so. I can try to check that off for a second. Hold on. Okay, go ahead, Jonathan. You should be able to share your screen now.
Can everyone see that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep, thank you.
All right. So I'll start off with this one. So again, my name is Jonathan Ferrigno. I'm the Community Relations Specialist. I represent 9 towns out of the Tolland area, of course, Tolland being one of them. So on the agenda for this brief presentation, again, I'll go over the storm experience. I'll give you some, statewide statistics on that last tropical storm, Isaias. I'll go over some steps that my team and the operations team has been working on in preparation for our next larger event, and then I'll pass it on to Bear, who, like I said, will go over some of the tree work in town, and then we'll both be available to answer any questions you might have. So this is just some statistics on this table. So over on that far left column there, that's some statistics from Tropical Storm Isaias. And over to the right, we're comparing it to some, other larger events that have taken place over the years in Connecticut. You see Tropical Storm Irene, Superstorm Sandy, and of course, October snowstorm. So, the duration of this last event was a total of 9 days. At our peak outages, we were over 600,000. And we had a total number of outages throughout the event of over 1 million. That treble spots there, which is 21,000, about 21,600 now. Just to be brief, a treble spot is an outage event. So there could be multiple customer outages associated with a treble spot. That's more, like a blown transformer or an open fuse, something like that. We had 2,500 broken utility poles, over 1,400 damaged transformers. And then at the peak of the storm, and this includes, our linemen, contractors, and then of course the mutual aid that we ended up needing to bring in for this storm. We had over 2,500 line crews and then 789 tree crews. Are there any quick, questions right off the bat about any of those statistics? Or again, we can, at the end, we'd be glad to go back and touch on any of this.
I hate to ask this because I don't think it would be readily available, but is there a way to get this same sort of sheet for Tolland during these storms at all? I know you don't have them tonight, but.
Yeah, I can certainly look into some Tolland specific statistics from our operations team that, it can break down the majority of these categories for the town of Tolland.
And then the only other thing that I had is this something that you can share with us so we can kind of have it, or is this something that you're not allowed to share?
No, I'd be glad to pass it. I've shared this briefly with John and Mike, so I'd be glad to pass this on.
Perfect.
So this slide just goes over, what the company does in preparation proactively for these events. John might tell you that EMD, he could do this. We have an annual ERP, that's emergency response preparedness meeting. These are hosted with the emergency point of contacts for all of the towns that we represent. And, at these meetings, we go over our designated point of contact for Tolland. That would be John Lytell, the EMD. And of course, I work with Mike and Scott, depending on the scenario. And then we also establish, I'm the community relations specialist representing the town. But during larger events, we have a liaison organization that, when our ERP, our emergency response plan, kicks in for a larger event, our community liaison team kicks in as well. And then each town receives a specific storm liaison. So, rather than me working with 9 towns through a large event, you have one person designated to you. In some cases, that could be me. In a large event like ECAS, you're going to get somebody else. And then they also designate critical facilities. Again, Mike and John will be aware of that list, and as well as a list of medically coded customers. And now just to quickly elaborate on those medical customers, I know the question gets brought up, more times than not during an event. So, that list sometimes is misinterpreted as, a priority restoration list. Unfortunately, that's not, especially in a larger event, that's really not the reality of the situation. What that list is customers can, get a doctor's note and they get put on our medically coded customers list. And during a larger event, there doesn't have to be a large event, any sort of outage event, Mike or John can ask me, can we have that medically coded customers list? And then we can disclose, the addresses. There's some information there that because of HIPAA laws, we can't disclose, but we can disclose that list. So the people in town are aware of what medically coded customers are, experiencing a prolonged outage. Now, that doesn't go to say, leading up to these storms, when we're forecasting a larger event with a lot of trouble spots and what we believe to be prolonged outages, we have plenty of, we have a system in place to alert these medically coded customers that, you need to make arrangements and be prepared for, a longer outage event here. And then the last thing that we establish at these preparedness meetings would be the Make Safe protocol. I work a lot with John on this. The Make Safe protocol, down at the bottom here is the definition of, our definition of a blocked road. And that's always a big issue during storms, whether it's a large statewide storm or a storm that just comes through Tolland, is making these blocked roads safe. And down at the bottom there is just a definition there. It has to be a road that is fully impassable to emergency vehicles. And that means, if one side of the street's open, that doesn't classify it as a fully blocked priority 2. And also if there's a way around, a reasonable way around it, through side streets or detours, that also would make it not fully impassable. But if a road is fully impassable to emergency vehicles and it involves our equipment, that goes into our system in the E911 system as a priority 2, and we make sure Make Safe crew is able to come out there and clear the roads. And then moving forward to what we're trying to improve from the last storm. John is familiar with the Make Safe protocol and what we have to do to work with the towns to report these blocked roads and get crews out to clear them up. And right now it's an old-fashioned form. John and his crew and Public Works, they go out and they survey the town and they mark down these fully blocked roads and they manually submit them to me, and then I look through the system and we kind of match up. This is what we have blocked. This is what I don't have in the system yet. In that case, they have to call it back into either our dispatch or through Tolland County. And what we're trying to do is eliminate that step where what we have doesn't fully match up. We really want to be sure we're looking, especially during a larger storm, we want to be sure we're looking at the same information as the towns. So this web-based portal here, there's a screenshot on the left. It's kind of, one page, and John or whoever he designates during a storm is going to be entering these on this web-based application. And the nice thing with this is it's going to go right into our outage management system, or OMS. And that's what, a storm liaison or a community relations specialist, such as myself, and our operations are all going to be working off of. What's going to eliminate that, that unfortunate situation where, John has to call something back in, or it's not quite matching up. We'll be able to give more real-time updates and more accurate information on, when and where crews can respond to these. And over on the right, that's just, those are the definitions of the priorities. If you're not familiar, a priority 1 would be a life-threatening event, such as, live wires on someone's car with them trapped in there. In which case, John knows, he calls that in and we get someone out there immediately. The priority 2s and 3s, that's more what this web-based application is intended for.
Sorry to interrupt for one quick second. I just had a question for the last slide. I think it was a second category for blocked road. By clicking this, I certify the road is blocked due to Eversource equipment. I'm sure our public safety know, but if a resident were to call our public safety during an event like this to say a road is blocked and they believed it was by Eversource equipment, how would they know the difference versus, I think we've had some issues with equipment in the town that is Frontier owned or operated or managed and is impacting, wires or trees are on them. How would the average resident delineate what's an Eversource equipment and what's potentially another utilities piece of equipment?
Yeah, so what I would say, and John, feel free to chime in. I would tell a resident to assume, any down wire is a live wire. Whether you're 99% sure it's a cable wire, like you mentioned, assume it's live, and you can call it in through the Eversource 800 number, and then it's up to our troubleshooters, our damage assessors, and then the work of the town to determine, if it's our wires or if it is cable wires. And as John knows, that's a good point you bring up, because that does happen often. Is that accurate, John? Do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, we try to influence even all our town staff, even public works or even town hall or schools or even the bus companies to call 911, because then it flags it in our system and it flags it with an address. And then, like you said, even Steve, depending on if it's a Frontier pole or a cable line or a telephone line, at least this way here, every wire is treated the same. And then we take the precautions from there with Eversource.
Okay, thank you. And just one follow-up. So the message by clicking here, I certify, is that something that's that holds the person that's submitting this request liable in any way to, if they were potentially saying it was something just to try and get it taken care of faster by saying it was a blocked road and actually isn't? Or is that just, I was curious why the language is included for that. It's a little bit more wordy than the other two options for priority 2 and 3.
Yeah, and just to clarify, so that, and sorry I didn't mention this. So this portal is intended for EMDs, or if a town feels strongly that someone else in town should also have access to this. This isn't really meant for residents to use. So yeah, that's a good point. And of course, once this is, again, we're in kind of the late development stages of this portal. And once this is rolled out, we're going to be hosting a training with all the emergency contacts in the towns. John and all the EMDs, they know the difference between that priority 2, if it's fully impassable, if not, and if it's not. So this isn't really intended for, residents. It's really a decision of the town you'll have a login. So it's going to really only be in the hands of, a couple designated points of contact in town.
Okay, yeah, no, thank you. I figured it was for the town. I just didn't want to, and I do agree that our team is very professional. I just wanted to make sure there wasn't some sort of liability or way that Eversource would come back and fine a town or do something to say, if they certified it that was roadblocked, and then Eversource comes in and says, well, it wasn't our equipment, it was actually somebody else's, that they'll fine the town in some way or penalize us in some way for falsely reporting something, even if it was by accident. I guess is what I was worried about.
Yeah, no, I understand. And unfortunately that happens all the time, and it's not, I'm not blaming anybody. Sometimes there's always, discrepancies, and, the town will think it's a priority 2. We'll come out and we'll put it down to a priority 3. That's always an open discussion. So yeah, that's not something that's uncommon.
Okay, no, I appreciate that there's an open line of communication for that. Thank you.
So that was kind of, I'm sorry, if you could go back to that there for a second. I was going to wait to the end, but since we're asking questions, those were my question was that this was for John or somebody at the town level. And you answered that this is a new process and you're going to do training on it. But I guess then that leaves my only question being this time around, God, John, I can't remember, but I think we had a list of like 30 plus roads that had significant blockages or stuff like that. Is somebody going to have to go in here and do one of these for every blockage, or is there going to be a way to do like a bulk update to say, like, if it's in an Excel format, answers all these questions, just send it over to you, or does somebody have to sit here and do all of them?
Yeah, so my understanding of it is that for each blocked road, you're going to go through this one-page process here on the left. And, again, John, chime in if you agree or disagree. But as of right now, when, John or Public Works or, whomever from the town comes across a blocked road while they're out there, they call it in through either our dispatch line, which they have access to, specifically for municipal officials, or they call it in at Tolland County. Now, we're not saying that a town has to use this. If John wants to call it in, he can still do that. What this is intended to do is to make sure that it goes directly into our outage management system without going through, multiple points of contact. And I think, again, not blaming anybody, but I think that that's where sometimes these lines of communication get lost. And unfortunately, we'll have a couple that don't match up. Again, if John is out there and he doesn't want to, pull up, if he doesn't want to use this mobilely or have someone designated to put it in, he can call Tolland County, he can call our dispatch line, but this is just another tool that's supposed to help the town.
Okay.
Yeah, Tammy, we did 110 roads last time on a list just like this. And the nice thing about it is a lot of towns surrounding us just call it in through the 911 radio system, through their fire or police. The problem is, like John is saying, when you have multiple avenues, the information gets written down or gets flagged wrong. John and I have found numerous times that something was supposed to be in North River and it was actually flagged to be in Coventry. So when you have roads that are the same throughout the town surrounding us, we need to take the extra effort to do this, because our guys, and then even including the highway guys that go out and do all the, they actually used a snow run for the highway. We actually used all the 911 calls, and then we actually make a run as well. But when you write down every single pole, or you write down kind of what you know what's going on, it gives them more of a global view. And we also attach pictures, which John and his staff, I think, believe that they love. So when you take the extra time, that's kind of proved why our restoration was probably faster than most of the other towns surrounding us. We had our power on a lot faster with a lot better detail of information. So John and I are working very hard to get this done, so you don't have 911, then you have the state police calling, or then you have the highway department or the bus company calling, because then they get 5 sheets of one address, and that's where the mix-up is, and that's why we're getting delays in the system, if John agrees with me.
So
Yeah.
then that would be an option, something that maybe you guys could think about here. Is there option to load up a picture? I don't see that now, but.
Yeah, I believe it's been discussed by my team about receiving pictures. I'll get the specifics on that. And I know you can see there the comments and the situation. That's extremely important too. To have John or someone from Public Works put kind of exactly what's going on. It really does help our assessors, our operations people, to kind of get out there and have an idea of what's going on. And again, sometimes, when notes or comments go through, a bunch of different hands, you don't always get the exact message you would want. So that's kind of the point of this.
I like the idea of streamlining, so.
Thanks for the question. And so this is the last slide here. And again, this is just on, another step we're taking for data reports. I send out a storm briefing during storms to, Mike and John. And I think we've heard after this last storm from our towns that, they want some more useful information from us. So we're planning to provide a more systematic briefing, and it's going to include some information on crews, how many crews are going to be in town, what they're going to be working on. We'll give a daily progress report, the number of the number of current outages and damaged locations that are pending, as well as what we've restored so far. We'll give that same information for the critical facilities in town. And then down there, the FPS 1, 2, and 3, those are those priorities we were just discussing. For the FPS 1s, we're going to give the number that we've completed. And for the 2s and 3s, we'll give, the number of blocked roads that have been reported and the status of them, as well as, the priority 3s. And we can also generate a report on, what we've completed on that front. So those are a couple things that, our team's working on communication-wise that we can improve for the next large event. Now I'll go into, and again, I'll answer questions at the end. I want, for the essence of time, see if we can get Bear to talk a little bit about our tree trimming in town. If you're ready, Bear.
Hi, Jonathan. Thanks. Yeah, I'm ready.
Let me just see that.
Yeah, I got that. That's great. I'm not sure how you want, oh, even better. Okay. Well, thanks everybody for having Jonathan and I tonight. I really appreciate it. I'm the arborist in the Hartford and Tolland area, and I manage 35 towns and all the vegetation trimming that happens along those towns. Annually, we collaborate with every town. Eversource collaborates with every single town. And the arborists, Eversource arborists, and our contractors, which differs for every region. In the Hartford and Tolland area, I work directly with Asplund to meet up with the town manager and anybody else annually to discuss the work. They stage their trucks in one area, and they do not perform repairs or fuel up in those areas. They usually have about 10 trucks and chippers with 2 or 3 person crews, and they follow current town excavation permits or whatever. I'm sorry, I'm losing the word at the moment. The bylaws, if they have police detail. Eversource contractors will call, email, or knock on door-to-doors, request.
Oh, Bear, I think we lost your audio. Bear, I'm not sure if your microphone may have died.
Here, I can text her, but sorry about that. In the meantime, once Bear comes back, she can continue this. In the meantime, were there any questions on the statistics or some of the plans that I shared?
I have a question, if I may.
Sure.
So I was kind of curious. Obviously, it's a large state, and we, things will be different depending on every storm across the state. But do we have any statistics on how we compare in terms of percentage of outages in Tolland County or neighboring towns? And again, it's particularly with larger storms that affect every town more equally. Is Tolland a high outage percentage town? I mean, it's a question, I don't know. Or is it low considering how wooded our roads are? So these are questions I'm a little interested in. If you have any statistics on neighboring towns or Tolland County that we can compare our peak outages with, or what have you.
Yeah, and yeah, Bear's back. Bear, I'll answer this question and then I'll hop right back into your presentation. So yeah, it really, each storm, each event's different. I could get statistics from just about any weather event, whether it be that last week when there was, or a minor thunderstorm that came through Tolland County, or I could get statistics from Irene or Sandy, the same as I just showed you for ECAS. We could always compare those side by side. I guess the short answer is it depends where the storm hits, really. I mean, if it comes through, it could very well just come through north of Tolland. It could come right through Tolland. You know what I'm saying? I don't mean to.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that makes sense. But I was just maybe more of a general trend. If for the past 10 storms, we are always on the higher side of our neighboring towns in terms of outage percentages, or we're on the lower side. These questions that indicate whether we need to be spending more money on tree management or what have you, or maybe we're doing the right thing relative. So just something I'd like to give me a little guiding sense on how to go forward, particularly the next budget cycle. Thank you.
Yeah, we can definitely touch on, the resiliency of our system. And I think actually Bear will be able to kind of touch on that as far as, maintaining the trees goes. So if we go back into this, you good there? Bear?
She's not muted, so.
Bear, can I suggest maybe the meeting instead of using the audio on the computer?
And yeah, just to go back to that question, I would say, the quick answer is, if a storm came through the whole Tolland area, I guess what I think you're getting at is, does, is the system in Tolland more compromised than in other surrounding areas? And I don't believe that to be the case, if that's.
Oh, I appreciate that.
We do have a bunch of questions for you that we kind of gathered ahead of time that I
Sure.
think we can go over at the end if you want, but if you want to start
No,
going
it's,
over some of them.
yeah, you can hop into those. Vera, if you join, just interrupt us because, I want you to be able to get through this.
I was just going to say before you go
Madam Chair,
forward that
this
I
is
am seeing the
Lulu.
chat room.
Looks like Bear is on the chat. I
Yeah.
think she's here, but she doesn't know what's going on. So I'm just going to pass it along.
Okay.
Can I suggest too, as like I was saying before, is if you have a cell phone or a phone, if you want to dial in so we can have your voice on the meeting, that might be a way around this.
Okay, we'll give Bear another second. And again, if she joins, we'll go right back to hers. Is there another?
Well, the first question is for tree plan and budget, so we should probably wait for Bear for that one. The next one that we had is, how do you go about assessing the damage after a storm? What is the response? What is the process for assessing that damage? Is it just through like working with John, or do you have people out driving around also?
So I guess we'll use ECAS as an example, right? So in a large statewide storm with extensive damage like that, first of all, our first priority is the safety of, everybody in our crews. As far, if there's any priority 1 calls, again, which are the life threatening calls, we will respond to those immediately. We get, a crew out there to de-energize and make safe. Beyond that, when you get into the priority 2 blocked roads, and priority 3, just to specify, is any other electrical hazard that's not fully blocking a road, wires down on the side of the road, wires and trees, stuff like that, and restoration. So first of all, our top priority is the safety of our crews. We're going to wait. For example, this last storm, we had to wait until the conditions were safe enough for our linemen to, get out there and do the work. And again, then it goes into, each storm, we follow our emergency response plan. And basically what that does is we're prioritizing both clearing blocked roads, as well as, doing restoration for customers, depending on the extent of the damage, depending on the storm. So in this last storm in ECAS, we had almost 2,000 blocked roads, and we saw, there are almost more than 600,000 now at peak. And then you have to add on top of that, we restored 800 critical facilities across the state, 500 polling locations because of the timing of that storm. So we start assessing that damage through our E911 system, which is what we were discussing, that's what that portal will help with. As well as, when customers, again, I would stress to residents, call in your outages. Don't assume that, we just know that there's an outage. People call in their outages. We start gathering that information, and also our OMS system, once it's smart enough to know that, when certain devices are damaged or substations, we then get a picture as well of, the number of total outages. And then when we begin restoration, we usually begin by the densest number of outages. And that's how we start restoring. So the transmission system, which are, those larger wires that you would see across the highways, if those are damaged, we start working on those. And that, because that's going to restore the largest number of customers at once. And then you start working into the substations and kind of working your way out from there. Again, so I'll emphasize, I'm not in operations, and someone from our operations team could give a much more technical answer than that. But that's kind of the general philosophy, I guess, that our ERP will follow.
Okay, the next question we had was, how do you go about assigning crews to restore power? I think that's kind of going to be kind of similar to what you were just saying, priority 1, 2, and 3, but that's the question. How do you go about assigning crews to restore power?
Yeah, so there's different types of, a certain event could include numerous crews. You know, it can involve, like Bear was saying before, you know, we could need a tree crew up, trees, cut the wires out of the trees. We need a line to, you know, de-energize, get the wires back up. So there's, you know, different types of crews, and then there's crews that come and then they cut and clear, they make safe the blocked roads and the priority one. So just to give you a brief idea of the structure of it, is we have 3 EOCs operating 3 divisions, Eastern, Western, and Central. Tolland's based out of the Central region. There's an EOC in Hartford, and we have a operations director, we have operations supervisors manager, and they're the ones kind of prioritizing using our ERP and dictating where crews are going and what types of jobs they're doing. And I see Bears, I don't mean to interrupt.
Yes, Jonathan.
Jonathan, I'm back.
Yep, very good. Thank you, Bear.
Hey, Bear.
Thank you. Thank you, Michael. I'm not sure if I'm breaking up or not because I'm on the phone and there's a little bit of delay within the audio and the visual. So I pardon that. I'm not sure what happened. I am on a tablet, so a lot of times it doesn't connect to the internet very well.
Your audio is coming in very clear right now. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Great. That's wonderful. Right now I have a split screen, Jonathan. I think that's my computer, so I'll just move that over. So just to continue briefly back to the beginning of the collaboration slide there, our contractor, Asplund, will call, email, or go door to door as a last resort, requesting signed consent for all tree work for each property. Now, since COVID, we do enforce calling or emailing first, because people are very hesitant to handle paper and or just come to the door, which is perfectly acceptable. All of our contractors are required to wear masks, and they do provide hand sanitizer, and they will give pens and not request them back. There is no cost to the property owner or the town for any tree trimming that we do upon our utility lines or our infrastructure. And in 2020, we have 30.37 miles that we're trimming. This is a map of our circuits that we're doing this year. So you can see that we're doing the 12J17, the 14W8, which is completed, and the 15M3, which crews are working on currently. You'll notice that within this same slide, the very top, enhanced tree trimming, abbreviated as ETT, there's 4.46 miles. Blue, that's the backbone, that's maintenance trimming, which is 5.8 miles, and scheduled maintenance trimming, which is also called SMT, 20.12 miles. And those colors are important because that'll come through in other slides. This is a copy of the brochure that is hung in the door hangers when work planners reach out to each property owner. It's a wealth of information, explains everything that we do in detail. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't like to read. This font is very small, but there is everything that we do is on this pamphlet. It's two-sided. It's a tri-fold. So this is one side, and then this is what's on the inside. The A is SMT, the B is backbone trimming, and C is the ETT or enhanced tree trimming. Now, again, all of our customers have to consent to the trimming unless it's in direct contact with the primary. If it's in direct contact with the primary, I do have to send out a certified letter to each of the customers, notifying them that we will trim. At this point, they do have the opportunity to either call or email me directly or Eversource directly, explaining their constraint or concerns with that. And in that case, I reach out to the customer and then we have a conversation about what's happening. But by Connecticut law, General Statute 16-234, we do have the right to trim and maintain reliability and safety of those lines to prevent burning and or outages. Thank you, Jonathan. So this is the SMT. This is that green line that was on the map. If you can see the utility above it, that's 15 feet of vegetation. To the right of it's 8 feet, and below the utility, the primary, is 10 feet. So we do trim all tall growing trees under and above the wires. And these are pruned to the ANSI standards. ANSI standards are what we are guided to by law to prune by. Those crews are held to those standards. So if cuts are not made to those standards, I go out and basically verify that they haven't been or they have been. And if they have not been, then they have to go back and fix them. So oftentimes you'll see trucks in the same area, and that's the reason why they're considered go backs, and they have to fix that. The backbone maintenance trimming is cut to the side of 8 feet, higher priority usually being above to this quote unquote to the sky where you have a clear direct view, or 20 feet above. And again, branches are pruned. And this year in Tolland, there is 5.8 miles of that. And then the enhanced tree trimming is selectively chosen by PURA. It's not dictated by Eversource. And those roads are roads that have not previously been enhanced tree trimmed before. And those are ground to sky with the impact of 8 feet on either side, removing tall trees growing under the wires. And this year, 4.46 miles in Tolland. This is a very, Jonathan, I'm sorry, can you go back one slide, please? Sure. This one is very, very shocking to most customers, and I can appreciate why. Because if you see the tree on the left, and then you see on the tree on the right, it's a completely different looking tree. However, a lot of times people don't understand that when they plant trees under or near the utility lines, they're planting them when they're little kids. They're seedlings, either planted from an Arbor Day celebration or what have you, and they're between 4 and 6 inches tall and maybe the size of a string at best. And they don't understand the ramifications that that tree wants to be 100 feet tall and maybe 100 feet wide. And so oftentimes trees will end up looking like this when they fall into that standard. Okay, Jonathan. Next slide, please. So this is the notification. Again, they'll either be calling the customer directly or emailing them. And if there's no contact either via email or via phone, then they will leave a door hanger. And this is the door hanger which the other materials are left inside. There's a pocket on the other side. And next slide. Inside that brochure is this consent form. We do by law have to get consent by signing and or email signing by every customer. And at this point, the customer can make modifications to what they choose. So if we ask for an SMT or an enhanced tree trimming or backbone trimming, they can make a modification or a refusal. And if the refusal, that's where we do get a lot of the outages in future years because that vegetation is in contact. But they do have the options of either agreeing to the work or not agreeing to work or making a modification at that time. And that point, we'll reach out to them and talk to them about it. Every year, we do work with the municipality and we do get this permit signed by the tree warden. And this just basically says we've talked about the plan and they've either agreed to the plan or we've made modifications to the plan, but we do have this signed consent from each town each year. So a lot of times when people see the Asplin trucks or other contractors' trucks come through the area, they immediately start to say, well, when are you coming here? When are you coming there? All of these circuits are prioritized per, basically, I'm sorry, I don't remember who asked this question, but someone asked me or asked us, when are certain areas trimmed over others? It's basically precedence of outages. So the backbone always takes priority, and backbone feeds the majority of the amount of customers, and also feeds hospitals, 911 facilities, town facilities, and schools. Our focus is decayed, insect-infested, damaged, or structurally weak trees, and then saplings capable of growing into the conductors. limbs are always pruned back to the branch collar to prevent decay, and branches up to 15 inches in diameter will be chipped. Other branches larger than that will be picked up, will be, either stacked or neatly placed on a customer's property, and they're picked up within 2 to 6 weeks of when they were originally cut. And John Koznicki is our work planner currently in the Tolland area. He's been working on the 15 M3, like I had mentioned. That should be finishing up with at the end of the month. And the other 2 circuits for Tolland are done for this year. And I'm happy to field any questions if anybody has any.
Okay, so we did have a couple of questions that we gathered beforehand, and the first one is about the tree plan. So we're gonna stick on that one there with you, if you don't mind, Bear. And I think you
Sure, Tammy, that's great.
answered this. How are they deciding which trees to cut and when? If I heard you correctly, you're using the precedent of outages that drives the schedule?
So each year when we have circuits that come up, so in 2020, again, the 12J17, 14 W8, and 15 M3, we base those upon all the circuits that we're trimming in the Tolland area, and the ones with the highest amount of outages and the quote unquote worst performing circuits get focused on first. As far as which trees are actually trimmed, each road is dictated by Pura of the specification that we can actually use at that time. And so if a tree falls within that specification of trimming, then that's what we'll do for that one road.
Okay, and then what is your responsibility in relation to the town or the homeowner's responsibility?
Could you repeat that, please?
What is Eversource responsibility in relation to the town or the homeowner's responsibility? I think, and that's just in reference to cutting down trees.
Cutting down trees. Okay. So let me just get a better handle on that. As far as cutting down trees, when trees fall within that 8-foot specification, and I think, Jonathan, I'm not sure if you still have control of that screen. If you could pull up that enhanced tree trimming, that would be great. I'm not sure if you do or not. If a tree falls within, or excuse me, is planted and then grows within that 8-foot specification, pardon me, go back, that one's perfect. If it falls within that 8-foot specification, that's when we will trim it. If it falls within that specification and is dead and dying or diseased, and it's leaning towards the utility, we will remove that. If it's outside of that parameter, that's really, trees don't read books. So each tree, depending on the slope, depending on the health, depending on the condition, there's a lot of parameters that really fall into that scope. We come out and we assess that at the time. A lot of customers don't understand that when they plant a tree, again, when it's a little baby, that it grows up. And at some point, a lot of times customers don't want to take responsibility for their own property. Eversource does not own trees. We work with customers to maintain the reliability and for the safety of the public. There's a lot of times that those trees fall outside of that right-of-way, of which it's within our scope of trimming or removal. And the customers often don't like to hear that, but that's something that it does fall back onto the customer responsibility.
So 8 feet. 8 feet is basically what you're saying is where it falls into the responsibility of Eversource.
Yes, and working with town trees, that's a different parameter, because a lot of times town trees don't fall within a specific 8 feet of this side, 8 feet of that side. That right of way changes with every single road. So we oftentimes don't know if it's a private tree or whether it's a town tree, and that's where we have to work directly and collaborate with every tree warden.
So Mike, I think the town tree, is the town, are the town specifications the same as if it's a tree within 8 feet of the road? The town would take care of the cutting of that, and anything over 8 feet then becomes the homeowner's responsibility?
We'd have to ask our tree warden, Tammy. I don't know. I'm not sure of that question.
Okay. Does anybody have any other specific questions for Bear before I go back to the list of questions that we put together?
Just one quick question. I know there was a resident that had inquired about interest of preserving logs or trees for the use of personal home fuel if they have a wood stove or something of that sort. And I noticed that the logs are saved for 2 to 3 weeks before being picked up if the resident doesn't opt to have them left there. But I was curious what happens once they're removed from the site, as well as if Eversource utilizes those wood chips, or if they offer them up to the community to use for some sort of ground coverage or landscaping purposes.
Steve, that's a great question. Jonathan, if you wouldn't mind just jumping forward to the consent form, that'd be really helpful. Right there. If you look to the right of the screen, down the bottom, it has certain notes there. And it says right in the middle of the screen, it says wood will remain on site, but there's also other options, and there's customer comments. If a customer wants the wood chips, they can certainly just put that in the comment, says, please leave wood chips. And at that point, they will just reach out to the work planner that would sign or put their information at the top of the form. They can reach out to that work planner and say, please put wood chips on blah, 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 blah. Whether that's the side of the property, whether that's in the driveway, wherever that might be. There are some sort of sticky wickets there, because a lot of times bucket trucks cannot drive on driveways because there's either a septic system or there's a riparian area, or there's a lot of situations where that might not be conducive to that, but we're willing to work with the customer as much as possible. As far as the logs, the customer is always welcome to take the logs for firewood and or fuel wood. If the customer doesn't want the logs, but they have a neighbor that wants the logs, they just have to post them. It says no trespassing, and then they work on an agreement with their friend or their neighbor to come pick up those logs. The problem with this becomes where a lot of customers don't understand that there's a lot of work involved with creating firewood. Either they are log lengths, so then the customers have to cut them up and then split them and then haul them off site, and there's a lot of work to that involved. So I just caution people to make sure that those customers really want that wood. Yeah.
Okay, and so otherwise, if no one wants it, it just gets kind of carted off and taken by Eversource and either disposed of or destroyed, because they're probably, obviously Eversource is in the utility business, they're not in the wood chip and tree sale business. Or do they find alternative like secondary companies that say, hey, we'll take the wood and we'll season it and store it to try and resell?
That's another great question. We do work with some people. We don't sell any of the wood. They can come pick it up. So we have areas where wood chips are stored after the tree work is done. People they sign an agreement, they can come pick it up free of charge. And same with the logs. We do have customers that will work with the company in sort of cost-sharing efforts to save on parking areas, whatever. If they store logs there, they can come pick them up. One company in particular is Connecticut Mulch. They will come pick up stuff instead of it going into a landfill, so it can be repurposed. Anytime you put log lengths of wood into any sort of green waste facility, you're obviously changing that carbon sequestration. So it's really important to leave log lengths when you can, as long as they have a good home. If they're on the side of the road and they're creating a nuisance, that's not a good home. But if they're able to be stored in a facility and or some other place, that's a better option. Mm-hmm.
And are any of those secondary sites you mentioned, are they within a proximity of Tolland so that residents were aware of it? Suddenly you get 20 or 30 logs or, tree length chunks that are given to a secondary resource that residents could say, hey, they just removed 20 or 30 trees from Tropical Storm Isaias. You can go here if you'd like to try and reclaim it and utilize it for the wood stoves or for personal use for campfires.
Another great question. During storm work, we do not do cleanup.
Okay.
So And so during that time, all that wood it stays on site. And the reason why, because our main focus is to clear roads, number one, to bring back the power, and keep moving on to the next outage. So during storms, our crews do not bring chippers on site, and they do not do cleanup for that. So that's only during regular maintenance. And during maintenance, again, those customers have the opportunity to say, I want the wood.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Anybody else? Okay, the next question that we had is, can you explain the priority list in town of which grids need restoration first? And when was that last looked at?
Everyone can hear me, right?
Yep.
Sorry, my camera's not working, but yeah, so I think that goes back to, you know, I'm assuming that question means, you know, how do we prioritize? Is that, you know, restoration? Is that kind of where you're going with that?
I don't remember exactly who asked this question. I don't know if any of you guys remember who it was. No, all right. So yeah, I'm assuming it has to do with the which grids need restoration first. Like, is there a priority of which grids get restored first?
Yeah. So again, I'm not, you know, I don't work in operations, but as far as, you know, which circuits in town we would want to pick up, I think it all depends. Again, our ERP follows, you know, we go by the densest number of outages. So whatever outage events are creating the largest amount of customers to be without power, that's kind of where we're starting. So unfortunately for, you know, somebody who is down on, you know, a dead end road where there's a fuse that's open, and as opposed to, you know, if there was an issue with a substation, like the Mansfield substation affecting, you know, customers in that area, you know, that's where they're going to start, and they're going to kind of work their way out from there as far as restoration goes. As far as which circuits, I think it depends on what's been affected.
Okay. How does the fact that our town is well and septic dependent taken into consideration from a Department of Public Health perspective?
Yeah, that I'm not, I can get back to you on that one. I'm not specifically sure. I do know that, you know, water treatment plants and stuff of that nature, they're typically critical facilities. And during these large scale storms that are statewide, the state has critical facilities that they're prioritizing, typically through PURA, who works with our, you know, regulatory affairs team, who will eventually, it works its way down to, you know, the community relations team, where that will be on, we have a list of community priorities that will be put on and indicate that that's something, you know, that needs restoration. But I can get more specific on that for you at a later date. Okay.
So I understand the water treatment part of it, but I think what the question is getting at is we have very few people in town who are on city water or sewer. We are mainly dependent on personal wells and septics, and being without power for a long time means we don't have access to water and hygiene. So I'm not sure if that, I think the question is more around how does that come into play when we're talking about restoration?
Yeah, thanks for clarifying that. I misunderstood that. And again, I think I'll have to get back to you on that. I'll have to ask somebody on our operations team as to how that is factored into our ERP as far as prioritizing goes.
Okay, so you'll get back to us on that one. Here is one we have, if you could maybe go over a little bit more about the medically compromised people and how that is handled from a restoration perspective? Or you mentioned something about, you specifically mentioned notifying them that there was an event coming and they needed to be prepared?
Yeah, correct. So our customer service will send out, they'll do phone calls, text or email, whatever the customer signed up for to receive notifications. If they're medically coded, they will be notified in advance. If we're forecasting, prolonged outages and, a high number of trouble spots. And again, like I mentioned before, I think that medically coded customers list a lot of times gets misinterpreted as, a restoration list. Unfortunately, the reality of, our operation team, they can't go out and restore, a single customer. It's kind of, unfortunately, the restoration steps don't really allow for that. But again, the way that works is that if a customer wants to be medically coded, there's a form that they work with their doctor on submitting to us, and then they get on that medically coded customer list. And if, either Mike or John were to request that during a storm for, their knowledge of, hey, we have this many medically coded customers in town without power, this is their location, does disclose their address. And like I mentioned, because of HIPAA laws, there's some information that, isn't passed on. But that's kind of more, it's a resource that we can provide to the town with their consent. And a lot of times, like I said, a lot of towns will think, do you have a medically coded customer list that prioritizes restoration? And the short answer to that, obviously there's those priority one scenarios that are life-threatening, immediately life-threatening. But the short answer to that medically coded customers list is it's not a priority restoration list.
Okay. I think that's important information to get out, because I know there were several residents in town who believed that they were on a list of medically compromised people to have their power restored because they need electricity for medical equipment or something else. So I think that's something that we need to kind of look at, Mike, whether we do it at a town level, or I know John has a list too, but if there's misinformation out there that people think that they're going to be restored quicker because they're on this list, I think we need to be sure that we have information that we're giving out to people so they understand that's not the case. The next question we had is how, this is kind of a vague one, so I'm not quite sure, but how are storms categorized?
So, I mean, the National Weather Service categorizes them, first of all, and I mean, obviously everyone here is aware of that. And then I guess I'm assuming what's meant by that. So our ERP also has a categorization for these storms. It's a scale of 1 to 5. I believe 1 being the most significant, and there's multiple categories that we factor in, and again, these are based off of forecast models, but we predict, on any significant weather event coming through, we're going to predict the number of trouble spots, outage events that we're predicting, number of total customer outages, number of, mutual aid crews we're bringing in, number of our crews and contract crews that we're preparing, how long we believe the event's going to be. Obviously we are very tuned in with weather forecasts. And so, yeah, we use the 1 through 5 scale in our ERP. And that information is contained in those storm briefings. So if, like in the case of Isaias, for example, when, that storm's predicted, to come up through our service territory, we're sending out briefings beforehand saying, this is a level 3 ERP, it's a level 2 ERP. And again, those are based off forecasts. So.
Based on forecast from the National Weather?
So we use, and I can get more specifics on this, we use a Yukon model. And then I believe we use another forecast model as well. We're not just looking at one, but the main one that we discuss with operations and with my team is there's a Yukon model we use. Now, again, it's the forecast. So for example, that model was, we didn't think that ECAS was going to cause the extent of damage that it did. I don't have the numbers. Right. I believe the Yukon model predicted 3,000 to 6,000 trouble stops for ECAS, and last minute when the path of that changed and we had over 20,000, that's something obviously that gets factored into the response there.
Okay. The next question we had is how our response is tailored to those individual categories.
So again, each one of those categories will have a predicted number of trouble spots and total customers out, in which case we are also predicting the number of Eversource crews, contract crews, and then if we need to, if it's a more significant event, mutual aid crews.
Okay. When do crews typically respond to your requests?
You mean mutual aid crews, or?
It just says, when do crews typically respond? I'm assuming that it's like you mentioned previously, there are multiple crews that you have, and we've just kind of talked about the categories and how that's kind of driven to it. So I'm assuming, like, if you know a storm is coming, I'm assuming this is where this question is going. If you know a storm is coming and it's rated a 4 or 5, when do you make that request and when do they respond, kind of thing?
Yeah, so when our ERP is activated, and we are predicting a weather event or an event that is going to be on that 1 through 5 scale, that's when our operations we're opening our regional EOCs that I mentioned, and then our operations crews are getting the linemen ready, and then of course we make arrangements lodging wise for any mutual aid we'll need to bring in. Now, in the case of a storm like ECAS, like I said, based off of the forecast models and the ERP level that we were predicting, we needed to call in a significant amount of crews very quickly. And the statistics I showed you earlier on that table, at the peak, we had over 2,500 crews come in, and they came in on very short notice when, we realized that this was a much more significant event. But yeah, to answer your question, as soon as that ERP is activated and as soon as we begin to prepare for whatever the prediction on trouble spots and total customers out is, that's when our operations team are, getting overnight crews ready, and getting the make safe crews ready to clear blocked roads. So all that, it's typically, if the forecast models are accurate, I mean, we know when significant weather's coming in. So it's typically in advance of a storm coming to the service territory.
Okay. What, if any, agreements do you have with other service providers, towns, and regions?
So as far as the towns go, we have, I guess we'll base this off of a storm scenario. Well, we'll start on a blue sky day. Each town is assigned a community relations specialist, such as myself. They're kind of the community liaison. And, for example, there's also, regional arborists based out of each work center. As I'm sure all of you know, the area work center right in Tolland. But as far as the storm liaison organization goes, I'm assuming that question is kind of aimed at. Each town has the same sort of, I wouldn't call it agreement, but sort of structure where there is a division They're either in the Eastern, Western, or Central Division for operations. They will have a community relations specialist, and they will also, in a larger scale event, have once we activate the community storm liaison program, they will have a specific community storm liaison assigned.
Okay. What ways are you communicating storm prep, safety during storm, and post-storm, and then post-storm cleanup?
Yeah, so we start with those storm briefings. You know, when the town, you know, John and Mike are well aware of if there's a significant event, weather event predicted for the area, but typically we'll send out a storm briefing. You know, if it's a smaller event, it'll say, you know, Eversource is monitoring the situation. And now we're trying to give a little more detail, you know, how many crews we have ready to go, what areas we believe are going to be more heavily impacted. And then throughout the storm, we send those briefings out, you know, with restoration progress, what's pending, and again, we're trying to get a little more information in those briefings that sounds kind of useful. And then ultimately, and I know that's what everyone's looking for at the end of the day, is we get global ETRs, and we get ETRs for each town. I mean, typically.
Say, I'm sorry, ETRs?
Estimated time of restoration, sorry.
Okay.
And we get down to the town by town level. Again, this is something we can't, especially in a large scale event like ECAS, we're not going to come out with an estimated time of restoration in the first couple of days. It's more towards the end of the storm, when well out of the service territory and we're well into our restoration and make safe clearing block road. We're able to get town by town ETRs, and then a global ETR of when we're predicting to have 99% of customers. And all this information I pass on to, or either I do it or storm liaison and I will pass it on to John and Mike.
Okay, it's all shared with John and Mike. So that gets back to when you were saying you have briefings with them. How often are you having those briefings with John and Mike? Daily?
Yeah, so it's the storm briefing is a document we send out, and we send that out to all of our towns. As far as communication during the storm goes, it's pretty constant. I mean, in this last storm, so just to explain the structure a little bit, the community relations specialists on my team kind of, we're working with a lot of towns and working with our unit leaders. So those community storm liaisons who are assigned specifically to each town start working directly with the town. So we had a community storm liaison assigned to Tolland who was working directly with John. I mean, you can ask John, but I'm assuming they were talking all day, every day throughout that storm. And then, you know, if anything needs to be escalated, you know, it either comes to me or the unit leader, and we can work directly with operations. But the purpose of that community storm liaison is to have that constant communication with John and Mike during the storm. Is that accurate, John?
That's accurate. It's just like you even said it. I mean, you got to have someone dedicated to answer that phone. So sometimes when they pass the torch at 10 o'clock at night and they say, hey, liaison 1's off, the rest of the night, liaison 2 comes on, you got to have someone answer the phone. So that phone call could go off at 12 or 1 a.m., similar to like the last storm. And that's why we were able to get a nice, strong liaison. And that's why we grabbed 2 days, if that makes sense, John.
And I was gonna just echo that too, John. Working with you in the last storm, you know, I felt like we communicated regularly. I don't know that we necessarily had like a twice a day model. I think we just kind of checked in whenever there was something to check in about. The only thing that I think maybe the chair is talking about, though, is to some degree we spoke, you and I, Jonathan, but I think John Lytell had another contact for evenings, and so I do feel like having the community relations specialist is good, that we can go to you in a pinch and ask any questions or relay any information to you that we need to.
The only problem, like Tammy, if you don't mind for 2 seconds, the only problem is passing the torch from hours to hours. So unfortunately, with small municipal crews, you got to have someone that'll be able to dialogue. So if I walk out at 2 a.m., I got to be able to have someone else that picks back up at 6 or 7. And that's where this, this major event that just happened, yeah, it was 9 days, but the continuation can't happen where, Mr. Rosen comes in and says, hey, I'm looking for an update. We try to pass the torch and try to pass emails either between myself, Lappin, Paul Russell, DPW, because they're out doing the same as with the online crews. So, the dialogue happens, and the problem that John and I are working on from Eversource is we're trying to dialogue it where when Eversource crew goes out and clears 1 or 2 or 3 of the roads, we have to touch base with the Eversource liaisons to say, okay, now we can take that road off and we can open that road. Without getting staff from either town or DPW, we won't know if that road was reopened or not as soon as they clear the trouble ticket or whatever. So I think that's going to be part B that I'm going to try to work with John and Eversource on to, we have that online thing. Then we'll be able to go in there and see that online ticket's closed and know that it's opened, and then the communication should get better. I will fall on a sword and say the communication from the Eversource briefings, I might have failed in the last storm to start sending those out. I have recreated my email blast to start sending that out to the dialogue of groups with the council and the fire department teams. So then the dialogue, and we're retraining a bunch of people. So hopefully that dialogue will continue, that we'll have a better communication link in the next few storms.
The next question that I have is training and drills. How do or should the towns participate with Eversource? Are there like group drills that you do with the town, large drills, and any opportunity there?
Yeah, we do. Our annual ERP meeting. This year, it's been discussed, and John brought it up. In a recent discussion. Because of the circumstances, we're potentially, and we haven't set a date yet officially, but we're potentially looking into doing a virtual annual ERP training. And basically, it's just kind of a refresher on, our ERP and emergency response plan, and some of the, regulations and stuff surrounding all that that we have with our emergency management directors, our emergency point of contacts during storms. And of course, we openly invite, town CEOs, mayors, first selectmen, town managers to join if they want to be educated on it. And then I know there's, the regional DEMIS regions. I know they do events probably more than once annually. And then of course, if anything specific, such as this new web-based application is rolled out, our team, the community relations team, will do trainings with, everyone we work with from towns during storms.
Okay, and then this last one I think we may have covered, but it just says, it's another one that just kind of says something a little vague. It just says regional response and communications.
I guess kind of assuming what that means, and correct me if you disagree, I guess going back to our divisions, our Eastern, Western, Central, right? That's how we break up our operations during larger events. There's an EOC in, Hartford, I believe New London, and maybe Newtown. Don't quote me on that. I know the Central one is in Hartford. So there's those emergency operations centers. There is a director of operations in each of those who are working with their operations managers, supervisors, and then the line crews. And then as far as, communication goes, there's community relations specialists that covers, one of us will cover every town in Connecticut. And we then activate that community storm liaison group underneath us for larger events. And we kind of help, facilitate that and manage, they help us manage all of our towns when it's, during a large scale storm. It would be difficult for someone on my team who's assigned maybe 15, 20 towns to give each of those towns the proper attention that they need during a storm like this. So that's when that community liaison, the community storm liaison organization comes into play, and we can get a specific person for each town. Does that answer that question?
I think so. At that point, guys, that's all the questions that everybody sent in. So I don't know if anybody has anything specific that they want to ask Jonathan or Bear. Steve?
I did draft up a few questions while we were going through the presentation. The first was based on our town meeting we had last week. I know Eversource wasn't present, but it did seem, even though we kind of laughed at it, it was seriously stated that generators are vital, especially in a town like ours where the majority of residents utilize well water. And I wanted to clarify whether Eversource still has ongoing programs for either rebates or assistance towards helping residents develop their own generator systems or generator hookups, whether it's credits or anything like that. I know there's programs for energy audits, but I'm curious if there's a program for generator aid to provide a discount for them to set one up, so that provides them that need of self-sufficiency when there is an extended weather event that leads to power outages beyond 72 or 96 hours.
Not that I know of. Let me double check on that one, because I am familiar with what you mentioned on the energy efficiency side, the audits and credits like that. I don't know. I haven't specifically dealt with us providing generators. I think I'm assuming you mean to customers, right? If there's any incentives or.
Yeah, like if they get, like, say, $100 credit on their next Eversource bill if they go out and purchase a generator and get a hookup set up, kind of thing, or something like that can let them be more self-sufficient. I think there's some for alternative energy like solar panels or other things like that. But
yeah, let me ask it, and I can get back to you on that one.
Okay. The second question was, I don't know if this would focus on you or Bear, in terms of, we talked a lot about tree maintenance, but pole maintenance, I think, is another area of interest, in that there have been a lot of poles along, at least where I live, as well as some side streets, that poles were kind of left for a period of time for replacement and haven't been replaced, as well as other utility poles that may be reaching the end of their useful life and are in need of replacement, or are kind of from a different generation, and the new generation of poles are used with different wood or different height. So I was curious how that process is done and how the review is done to replace old or out of code, perhaps, poles in our community.
Yeah, and I think that's, I think it's on a case-by-case basis. The transmission poles, again, which are those much larger structures that you see, across the highways, those can be part of larger, resiliency projects that we're working on to enhance the transmission system. Of course, we're also always trying to enhance the distribution system, which are those smaller, poles and wires you see along the regular road. I think it's case by case. If there's a project that, a resiliency project or a maintenance project that's going on, you might see some of those being replaced. As far as, incidents where you like a Carver's pole or a pole coming down in a storm, we have a single pole administrator who we have a whole department that deals with that. If there were any specific, I don't know if you asked that question with any specific time, but there are pole numbers on all the poles. I will note that you'll see that most of them are marked. So if it's a CLMP pole, that's ours. Frontier does own some of the poles, in which case, that's something that you'd have to talk to them about. But if there was a specific pole, CLMP pole that you had in mind, and then there was a pole number on it, that's something that passed on to me from the town, and I, the right people in the right department. So I guess to answer your question, it's case by case.
No, that's fair. I think there are a few that are on the road I live on, which is Old Stafford. It's kind of a secondary artery that leads between two different towns. So I've seen a few poles along there traveling back and forth that took a while to be erected, or they're now erected, but they're not connected to the actual wires. So and I've seen some along Buff Cap and a few other neighborhoods where they're kind of up, but they're not fully connected. So people have been concerned about the timeline of having those fully established to the chain. But my next question was going to be in regards to
Steve, this is Bear. Can I interrupt?
Oh, yeah, no worries. Go right ahead, Bear.
Yeah, I just wanted to give 2 cents on that. So the area that you're in there's a CAP project going on there, and all of those lines will be transferred shortly. There's a lot of vegetation management that still needs to happen before those lines can go live. So you'll see a lot of the shorter poles being replaced by larger poles, and those shorter poles oftentimes are not CLMP or Eversource poles. And so if they're Frontier poles, all those communication wires that are below the primary need to be transferred first before that pole can be removed. So oftentimes you'll see a smaller pole that's somehow lashed or bolted onto the larger pole. All those communications need to be moved over before that pole can be removed. And that's not the responsibility of Eversource, that's the responsibility of the communications companies. I'm not sure if that's helpful or not.
No, that definitely is helpful. I think that's an ongoing, issue we've heard from a few different residents in town in different areas, that we kind of have to rely on the communications companies to take care of their work before you guys can move forward. So I appreciate that, definitely. The next question, sort of a softball. Some people were kind of curious, what is the prime purpose of the Eversource building? And there's sort of like a field of open poles that's kind of on the Tolland line near the industrial zone. What are those primary uses for, and how do they help assist with storm response?
Yeah, so I'm assuming, so that work center, our work centers are where we have crews and our trucks are staged. As far as those specific there, I don't know if I know you've probably spent more time in the Tolland Work Center than me. I don't know specifically. I know what you're talking about. I've seen them. Bear, do you have any input on that? If not, I'd be glad to ask.
So those utility poles up are for training. They actually have rodeos down there that they actually have live training events that they end up doing events. They haven't done them for the last year or two, but normally that's where a lot of the other Eversource crews come in and they do the live rodeos. And that sometimes they put a mannequin on a pole, and sometimes we have to get the message out for residents not to call 911 that there's not something on top of the pole at 1 o'clock.
Good to know. And sorry, Bear, were you going to add anything else to that, or did the chief cover it pretty well?
No, he got it spot on.
Okay, awesome. And then the final question, this was more just a logistical and staging area for storm response, is that obviously Tolland is a smaller kind of quiet community. We don't really have an active hotel or lodging situation. And I was curious, in terms of staging for crews to come in and out and, usually working pretty 12 to 16-hour days or more, where would you say they generally have to be stationed out of in order to get to Tolland to respond to these needs when there's high weather incidences?
Yeah, so my team works a little bit on the stage. So that's more, and I'll ask our operations people, because that's more those logistics of the lodging is kind of something operations deals more specifically with. But I do know that, so for example, the amount of mutual aid we brought in during this last tropical storm, Isaias, we were looking at, our team was asked for ideas in the communities that we work in for, especially during the unfortunate circumstances surrounding COVID, where we don't want, typically we could have multiple crew members, in a hotel room. And I believe, that's changed under our COVID guidelines. So our team was asked, do you know any, campsites or places that additional places that we could lodge, mutual aid crews safely. I don't know off the top of my head, and I'm assuming that it might differ per event, you know, where crews are coming from. You know, if one area of the state is hit harder than the other, crews will come from the other regional EOCs, the other divisions. But in an example like ECAS, where the damage is so large scale statewide, I think it's difficult. We're not really pulling crews from different areas. Bear, if you have any, I don't know if you'd have anything to add, but I can get more specifics from our operations people who actually do that.
Yeah, Jonathan, this is Bear. I'll only add a couple things, but operations do manage all the lodging for not only line crews, but for tree crews as well, and for other people that come in to assist with logistics. In the ICA storm, we had crews at lake compounds, we had crews all over the state. And it's basically, as soon as the hotel fills, they just have to basically reach out to another hotel and make accommodation. So it's really, as the need implores for more lodging, the team is on it, already reaching out to local hotels and motels and campgrounds and such sort of areas that can hold everybody.
No, I appreciate that. I did hear a couple of stories that were definitely, you know, I really felt for hearing certain crew members that had to come into the state from like Indiana or even Canada that basically had to sleep in their trucks, or, you know, due to COVID had really restricted abilities to get lodging. And I know in a normal circumstance, there probably would have been more accessible lodging. COVID kind of threw an additional wrench in that, but just making sure that there's those opportunities for the town. I think Del Air might be in Tolland in terms of camping resort, but obviously again, it falls under the unique situation. If it had been a winter storm like the October one in 2011, it probably would have been available, but just trying to get an idea of how we could better work with Eversource to provide opportunities for crews to be closer to on-site assistance and aid so that they're not having to travel several miles from their lodging area to respond and provide more efficiencies for recovery.
Yeah, we definitely appreciate that. And you know, that obviously is a very, you know, that's the logical approach to that. And I'll get more details, but, you know, our operations people are, you know, I am sure they're assigning crews where it makes sense. Unfortunately, in a larger scale event, there's more work than crews available. But yeah, that's a very good point. And let me get more details on the exact process that we go through there.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you, John. And I'm all set, Chairman Nuccio. I think Brenda might be up next for a hand raised.
Yep. Brenda?
Thank you, Steve. You asked, and the questions were answered for mine. I just want to say thank you so much to the two of you for coming out and spending this time and helping us answer our questions and get us a good education on what you do. It was very enlightening and very informative, so I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else have anything? Okay, I am not seeing anybody. So Jonathan and Bear, thank you both for coming in your presentations. If you could send those presentations over to Mike so we can have them in our files and that for our notes and stuff, I'd appreciate it. And I look forward to hearing back from you guys on any of the other items that came up that you may not be able to answer. And I appreciate you coming to spend time with us tonight.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'll get those materials over and we will get answers to those questions. Thank you for having us. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Right, take care. If you want to stay with us, you can, but I know it's not really Eversource related.
Okay, that gets us on to 8-3, discussion of reopening night meetings at Tolland Town Hall. Now this here is a discussion item where Mike is going to kind of go over what we have been talking about and looking at, and then we can kind of have a discussion.
Yep. So hi, Mike Rosen, Town Manager. I guess what this is a new business item, hence why it's under new business, but it's the first time this is coming up for us. I did put together a summary memo that was in your packet, but I'll kind of walk through it for the people at home. So it's been requested both at council meetings as well as people have come up and asked me or called and said, what's the story with having in-person public meetings again? Of course, understanding that we're still in the midst of a COVID-19 pandemic. So what I did was I tried to put together a memo after doing some research, which I describe in the memo, sort of a pros and cons list of sort of the three options that I kind of have come up with. And I'll kind of walk through it a little bit. And if there's anything we want to jump into or spend more time on, let's do that. So first of all, just for background's sake, we have been meeting virtually since March of 2020, very quickly into when things started going haywire in March. We figured out that going with a remote meeting software and getting some licenses for it would be prudent to do day-to-day business, as well as to keep going with night meetings or public meetings. Every town, and I'm going to use the phrase town board. Town board can mean any council, commission, board, just it's a general term, but every town board has had access to Zoom in one way, shape, or form, and most have conducted town business during the COVID-19 pandemic. So everyone's had the opportunity to continue meeting virtually during the COVID-19 pandemic. We were in fact able to have an effective budget process completely virtually this year, which was the first of its kind, and no one's ever done it before. Anecdotally, people have said that attendance at meetings has been up over the past 7 months because it's quite convenient to just log in from wherever you may be to these meetings. So if you're a member of the public who has a family, maybe you're not usually able to get over to town hall, you can just simply log in from your phone or your iPad. We've been doing night meetings in compliance with the governor's executive order 7B, as in boy. This is one of the earliest executive orders that was issued related to COVID-19. It's the executive order that sort of goes above and beyond our usual Freedom of Information Act. It allows 7B allows for night meetings, public meetings to take place virtually, so long as people introduce themselves. The meeting is recorded and posted on the town website. Minutes are taken as they would normally be done anyway, and materials are available 24 hours ahead of time. A lot of our town boards do have staff people that attend or staff these meetings. Not all, but most do. And we've kind of worked out an internal system of how we go about conducting these meetings, with chairpersons being either the host or the co-host, how we begin the meetings. And currently there's no in-person component to having these meetings. So right now, town hall is, nobody's sitting there in a room, because we're doing this using Executive Order 7B remotely. So moving forward, even though this system has been working, like I said, all boards have been utilizing it, but some residents have brought up that they would like to start considering how we can have in-person meetings again, even though we're in sort of a uncharted pandemic situation. Nothing in the current situation mandates which mechanism we use, so long as capacity restrictions are adhered to and the respective guiding law or ordinance is followed. So the three options that I sort of saw that other towns are using are that public meetings could go fully back in person. If we did that, we'd have to be aware of capacity restrictions, and also possibly utilizing the remote participation policy, which is another agenda item we have later on tonight, but for people that may not come in person. Option two is that we stay with what's been working for the last 8 months, where public meetings stay fully remote until the pandemic, I don't know, I hate to say goes away, but until the situation is alleviated, whether vaccine or whatever that might mean for the future. And then sort of the third approach is the hybrid model, which, as Coventry and Ellington do for some, but not all of their boards. So that way you have some people in person and some people participating remotely. So I tried to sketch out what pros and cons would look like for each of the three. These are really based on my own thoughts. So these aren't based on guidance or anything like that. And this is just something that, anecdotally and also just from my experiences, sort of being I'm sort of Tolland's, a chief Zoom person, and I've been working with all the boards and everything and getting them up to speed. So I guess these thoughts are just based on my own experiences. So when you go back fully in person, it puts us back within the realm of FOIA. We're no longer under Executive Order 7B. To put it in perspective, I think FOIA came about in the 1970s. So we have decades of experience with FOIA. We only have 7 months of experience with 7B. So there's a comfort to going back to what we know, since it's what we've been doing for decades. And in-person interaction at public meetings has been cited as something that's been missing for the past 7 months. Looking someone in the eye and not through a screen helps build relationships and foster understanding. Virtually, it's just like in an email, things can get lost in translation and words and intent can be misconstrued. So that's been missing for the past 7 or 8 months, in-person interaction. Obviously, there's some cons to it though, too. Going back fully in person, obviously social distancing is a difficult task to monitor during public meetings. What I wrote here was additional staff may be required to attend in-person meetings. The reason I said that was because if you have a staff person who's staffing the meeting, likely they're not going to be able to keep an eye on how many people are in the room, or if there's a line queuing up in the back of the room for people to maybe talk at a public hearing, or I got to count, okay, the room only held 17 people. We have 14 just to make sure we don't go over the 17 mark. It can get very distracting. So you may need somebody else sitting there, whether it's a responsible person in the audience or another staff person to help keep order in the room. And then also the fact that staff, we're not invulnerable. We're also vulnerable to exposure. So there will be an inherent risk of spreading the coronavirus by having more people in the building for longer periods of time in enclosed rooms. So Town Hall's been open now since July to the public, and it's been working very well. But don't forget, this is under the auspice that people are getting in and out, doing their business as quickly as possible and leaving. They're not sitting around for hours and hours at public meetings. So we're already about 3 hours into this meeting. And if we were up in the council chambers, we'd all be sharing that same air and everything in the room together. An outbreak, of course, could potentially cause the town hall to close, and we would have to quarantine. Meanwhile, deep cleaning would have to be done, which is another unanticipated expense. If we closed, right now I wouldn't want to close town hall for 2 weeks, especially with the election cycle coming up in November. So that would be really brutal if we had to close right now due to an outbreak. We'd also have to speak with Public Works about where it's possible to have cleanings of the conference rooms that are used in some sort of regular fashion. Right now, the conference rooms are not cleaned because they're not utilized. During the day, we do have some meetings upstairs and people tend to wipe down their own areas with Lysol wipe. So we don't have Public Works cleaning those rooms. Also, capacity restrictions. Right now, just to put it in perspective, council chambers has a seating capacity of 35 people. The way the executive orders are, you have to have that. So that's 17 seated bodies in the council chambers. Look at us. We have 7 counselors plus myself and the recording clerk. That's 9. That only leaves a couple of people that you can have in person to join us for the audience or other staff or potentially guests. Earlier tonight, we had 40 people on this meeting. I was keeping track. So the other thing too, some boards have been meeting outdoors while the weather was nice, but the season's changing, so people aren't going to be meeting outdoors any longer, probably come winter. We don't plan for it. And then also, being back fully in person, you're going to lose members of the public who are not going to participate in these meetings because they're sheltering for whatever reason, but they're sheltering, so they won't be joining us. And like I mentioned before about the cost of potentially having more cleanings or hiring more custodial staff, we'd have to budget for that during the process if that's the way the council wants to go. I'm going through this a little bit at length because it's going to be the same thing when we get to the hybrid approach anyway, so it's better just to go through it now. So option 2, where we continue with the remote approach, everyone stays safe at home. Remote meetings have had higher participation rates than in-person meetings. People at higher risk can participate without having to come in person and put themselves at risk. And then there's also a convenience factor as well for staff, guests, and residents to participate from home and not have to drive home afterwards. Just think about Bear and Jonathan, who were here a few minutes ago. I'm not sure where they live, but they were able to participate just by clicking and coming on for a few hours. And we have several members of staff who are here, and again, there's a convenience to it. The cons against it, though, would be obviously this is against having fully remote. Although we have a very good handle on security measures and we've tightened things up very considerably over the last 7 months, there is still a threat against Zoom bombings and things like that. That just sort of kind of a sign of the times. But people like to come onto meetings and mess around. We've been pretty good about. At least the town, as far as I know, hasn't had Zoom bombings, so we've been good about that. You lose that personal feel we talked about earlier. The capacity limitation of these meetings that we're doing through Zoom are 100 participants. So depending on the type of meeting we're having, we don't normally hit 100 anyway, but in theory, there's a participation limitation, but it's definitely more on Zoom than it would be in person. There is a cost to these software licenses. I think earlier today we heard that it's about $200 to $300 per license. That was when we talked about the library getting one. And, the town, we have 3 or 4, and I think that includes zoning and that includes human services. I know public safety has a couple of licenses. Some other entities have licenses as well. So there's a cost that we're building up a following of Zoom licenses here that we're going to have to budget for going forward if we still stay in this remote situation. Also, convenience has meant that meetings have trended longer. Generally, meetings have been in between 3 and 4 hours. I think tonight we're going to break that record. So, just to be mindful of longer meetings. And some people have cited minor trouble with the remote meeting software. It might be issues stemming from somebody with a disability, or maybe an aversion to the technology, or whatever it is. I'm not looking to name things, but people don't like doing this remotely, so that's a con. So now, if you put the two together, you get a hybrid model, and the good thing is, depending on your comfort level with either attending in-person meetings or being a remote participant, almost everybody can be accommodated using the hybrid approach. Those who want to come in person may do so. Those who wish to stay home may do so. That's the overarching pro of this approach. There are some cons, though. A lot of them mirror the cons of being in person in general. This one's a relatively new con, but this is inspired by a conversation I had with the Coventry town manager. There's actually an awkwardness of who speaks when, because those in person and those remotely are both participating in the meeting. And John told me that some sort of like a courtesy or cordiality policy, or just even informally, needs to be created, so that if you ask a question, okay, does anybody have anything else to add? You look around the room, then you say, okay, anybody online have any questions? It's just a nuance of this world we're going to be living in if we do it this way. Having people remote and in person both. Staff has to come in regardless, because someone's got to be responsible for the equipment. So, for any town staff that may have been using remote software to do these meetings, they're going to be coming back into the building, and there may be some pushback on that. We'll have to see. Capacity issue. So case by case, we may need to consider having in-person signups ahead of time. Because like I said earlier, if our capacity limitation in the council chambers is 17 people, and we're about 10 of those, there's only 7 other folks that can come to the meeting. So we might want to consider having signups ahead of time to say, if you're coming in person, please let us know, so that way we don't have too many people in the room to do that. And, we'd have to, that's more administrative work to track. And then we'd also need to figure out the cleanings of the meetings room. So Coventry does it where if you're going to attend in person, it's kind of on the attendee to clean down their own area. John does provide a little box of Lysol wipes, and you just wipe down your own area. DPW won't be present at meetings to be cleaning constantly, and they're already stretched very thin with all the increased cleanings they've been doing of the town hall building, library, other town buildings. So they're stretched thin. Plus, DPW, we do have some facilities folks, but a lot of these people that are doing the cleanings are actually they're either highway or parks employees that are taking an hour or two in the morning to help us out. And so it takes them away from their normal jobs. To perform a hybrid approach, social distancing will still need to be adhered to within the meeting room. So what that means is we may actually end up having lower participation in person than if we were to keep it solely remotely. And as I mentioned earlier, the staff person in the room could become distracted because they become the overseer of social distancing and Zoom and who's speaking at what time. And like I said, the feedback I've heard from another manager is that staff, and John, has not been able to concentrate on the meeting itself because they become sort of the gatekeeper of all things that are going on at that moment. So the chair of other boards that don't even have staff, they become that gatekeeper. And so now their attention is taken away from running the meeting and keeping order, which would subject them to distraction. Room availability is another issue. The only room that I'm thinking we can do this with is the council chambers. The other conference rooms in level 2 are very small, and if you have to have their capacity, you're talking about maybe having a meeting of 3 or 4 people, which doesn't make sense. And then I guess if you want to talk about the library program room, we would have to loop Barbara into that. But for the moment, especially not before the election, but in the meantime, let's keep it to the council chambers. Another sort of con here is that larger boards, and what I mean by that is sort of our elected boards, have been meeting more frequently during the pandemic using Zoom. So if there's capacity limitations, or you can only have one meeting a night because the council's meeting on a Tuesday night, and that may conflict with a Birch Grove meeting, just for example, who wins out between those two? I would think that likely in that situation it would be the council, but still you might have other smaller boards that are going to say, hey, we'd like to meet in person as well. And then lastly, whether it be for comfort, health concerns, or otherwise, some people will not return to in-person meetings for this foreseeable future. That's something that's an industry-wide thing. That's not just Tolland, it's everywhere, that there is just some group of people, some people that will not come to in-person things because they're either vulnerable or it's more of they don't want to risk it. And if there's an option to participate in another format, they prefer to do that. So what I think is that Zoom is not going away for the foreseeable future, and we need to have some sort of remote component to doing public meetings, because whether it's the town board members themselves, the staff, or public or guests, you may find that cross-section of people who don't want to return into the building cuts through all of those all those groups I just mentioned. So in summary, I did speak, I've attended a hybrid meeting in Ellington, and I did go over to Coventry and see how they use that owl camera that I've talked to some of you about before. It's an interesting way of doing things. It has its pros and cons. You do get to look somebody in the eye again, but you have to do it across the room, and preferably if people are wearing masks and things like that. But we'd have to decide which boards this would be opened up to, or if we want to pilot it with the council and go from there. But there's not a one-size-fits-all answer. Every town's doing it differently. We're actually more on the front of the curve with this. Most towns are not even considering doing a hybrid model quite yet. I think Coventry and Ellington are ahead of us, but we're sort of, the fact that we're considering it puts us above our peer towns. And just, this is more of just my thoughts here, but we've always tried to make these meetings as comfortable as possible. It's been working productively in the past 7 or 8 months. We try to screen share like we did with Jonathan earlier and put things up so people can watch from home and follow along. Materials are posted 24 hours in advance. And, that's just, I don't know, maybe we need to hear more from the people, the proponents of why they want to go back into in-person meetings at the moment. But, we'll adapt to whatever the council wants to do with this. We'll make it work. But what we've been doing so far has been working. And lastly, I would wait until at least November to implement, because if we were to, first of all, the election, and second of all, the equipment, the OWL camera that I've been looking into, they have a backlog at the moment. So, it's going to take a few weeks for it to get here. And training needs to be done on it as well, because it's kind of a high-tech camera. that would capture, it's like a 360 camera that captures the entire room, a panoramic view of the room. So I think that's all I have for my summary. Oh, one last thing. I talked on the governor's call the other day. There's a possible new executive order that may be governing hybrid approach meetings. As I said, we're kind of ahead of this at the moment. So the state's catching up to some of these towns that are already ahead of it. As far as I know, they have not issued that EO yet, but I did mention it on the governor's call last week, and I spoke to the deputy legal counsel for the governor, and they are aware of it and are looking into. It would sort of be it would be what wins out between FOIA and 7B. If you do a hybrid model, this EO would cover that. It would be the new governing ordinance. And that's all I have.
Okay, so this is a discussion item for us. So Mike just went through his memo there, and I'm sure everybody had a chance to take a look at it. So does anybody have any questions specifically regarding the memo or opinions on this piece? Steve.
So one quick question and then a comment. The first is, in terms of the software such as the OWL camera, does this fall under expenses that would be utilized in the emergency declaration fund, or would this have to come straight from the budget?
The OWL, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Manager Rosen. Sorry, no, go ahead.
The OWL camera is going to be purchased from the town manager's budget. So it's not the declaration fund.
Okay, and would that follow the same through the Zoom accounts that we've purchased? Is that also through the town manager's budget, or is that emergency declaration?
So the Zoom accounts were not FEMA eligible. I think Lisa's still on this call as well. Maybe I'm not sure if she's still. Oh, okay. So those were not eligible for FEMA reimbursement. So what we've been doing instead is paying for them. The first year of them was out of the declaration fund, right, Lisa?
Right.
But I think going forward, we're going to have to work that out through the budget process. I mean, each department that has a Zoom license, including the manager's office, the one we're on at the moment, we're going to have to pay for that out of our individual budgets, unless Lisa, that's something Lisa and I will have to discuss. I don't think we've decided that yet.
It depends. If you're going to go forward with it, then we would have to put it into the regular operating budget.
Yeah, and they're about 300 or so per license, and they do renew in March because we started in March.
Okay. I guess my initial thought, just hearing the presentation, which I greatly appreciate, and all the pros and cons, my personal opinion is to stick with the virtual, at least seeing the increase in uptick of positivity rates through the end of the calendar year, if not through the designated, I think it was February or March, is the extension of executive order powers that Governor Lamont and the commission had approved a few months back. That's my initial feeling on that, especially going into the winter months where winter storms and other impacts in terms of flu season, in terms of the second wave being a considerable possibility. It just feels like we've been doing a really great job. It seems like we're really ahead of the curve in terms of avoiding Zoom bombing and other events that prevent us from effectively organizing. You know, even in terms of the Eversource presentations, we did work. There was a little bit of a delay, but we worked pretty well with Eversource to try and find alternatives to react to sudden loss of audio capabilities or video capabilities, that they were still able to participate. And also being mindful of our budget constraints, trying to maintain PPE and cleaning supplies for town staff to utilize for day-to-day business through the winter seasons versus diverting any of those resources for in-person meetings where we could be meeting continually like this, that would allow for those services to be utilized for just day-to-day functions with residents versus, again, being diverted to having town meetings. But so that's my initial preference, is to stick with the fully remote until the end of the calendar year at a minimum.
Okay, I wrote that down. End of the calendar year or to the emergency thing. Okay, Cassandra?
I share the same sentiments as Steve. This is Cassandra Forsyth. So same. I feel like going to the end of the year would be the best choice. And having experienced with hybrid and high flex teaching right now, and that interaction is not pleasant because there are technical issues that make it hard to communicate between in person and online. And so I just think what we've been doing has been helping to keep everything under control, as well as, appeasing to everyone's safety levels at the moment. So I prefer keeping it this way, at least until the end of the year.
Okay, thank you. Brenda?
Hi, yes, a question for Mike. Would you be able to share a link that has like a demonstration of what the OWL camera would look like for the rest of us? At some point, it doesn't have to be today, but, so that we can see what it looks like. I would hate to get like motion sick or something.
So actually, if you don't mind,
video.
So if you don't mind, I can share you something. Just let me know if you're going to be able to see this on my phone here. So I have two pictures. I'm going to share it. So for people, please look at your screens for a moment. That's what the camera looks like. It looks like a cute little owl. So you put it in the center of the room. You prop it up onto like a table or a podium, and it is very smart. It can hear and focus on who's speaking, up to 2 active speakers at a time. It'll give you like a split screen, and I'm going to show you what that looks like right now. So I went over to Coventry and I met with John, and what this is on the top of the screen there is a panoramic view of what the room we were physically standing in. So I'm over on the right side of the camera, and John Elsesser is all the way on the left side up there. I don't know if you can kind of see, but what it shows you is a split screen of John and I talking. We're physically many feet away from each other, but it focuses on you, and it's smart. It turns and says, "Oh, Brenda's talking. Let me look at her." So that's what it does. So I can show you if OWL has a tutorial on the website, we can pull it up. But I did take some pictures when I was down there because I'm like, I know I'm going to probably have to share this at some point. So.
Yeah. Cool. No, thank you. Because I try watching my kids when they play video games, and sometimes a panning camera gives me motion sickness. So that's something to be aware of. I wanted to make one comment. If we go to in person and people are wearing masks, we lose half of the facial expressions. So there is going to be interference. So getting together isn't going to help alleviate all of the communication issues and the interpersonal issues. And I'm sure Cassandra can talk to this a little bit more. Being able to read people sometimes with the covering is going to be much more difficult. I think I would also like to make note that having these Zoom meetings have made it much easier for accessibility for people with disabilities or driving issues in the evening. It also assists families to be able to participate, especially when there's only one caregiver in the household or one caregiver available in the household. So it makes it a little bit more accessible for the families. I think the length of the meetings has to do with the agendas and what we're adding to the agendas. We have a very aggressive, like we've said many times, items to get through the next, I guess, year and a few months left now. So, maybe taking a look at what the planning and zoning has done and add some meetings so that they can be shorter in nature and we can focus more detailed on something. And honestly, I am not going to be comfortable going into a meeting room with a group of people who are not within my cohort, where, putting more people at risk. And like you said, we're putting the town employees at risk by doing that. And frankly, when we have people who sign the emergency orders saying, do not show up if you're sick, and then show up that same evening and 2 days later, sick to meetings, it does not make me feel comfortable. It does not make me trust the leadership or the judgment when those kinds of things happen. So I can't at all feel comfortable attending these meetings, especially if there's not going to be any accountability for people showing up that might be ill.
Lou?
Thank you, Madam Chair. That I am for looking to try and move things along as far as getting back into the chambers, meetings that way. I think that the hybrid and aiming for that for the end of the year, the beginning of the year, I think is something that would be appropriate. We need to start looking ahead and start working towards it. I'm familiar with the technology that Mr. Rosen has, and it's an outstanding conferencing technology that I think would cover all that we would have to make sure people are adequately covered. But I am one that would support also still a hybrid model, allowing people to zoom in, pose questions. It's just a matter of working out type of policy or type of protocol to handle that. As far as concerns, I have concerns about people that are saying that they're concerned about being in the meetings in person when they have also been public in large meetings without masks and things like that. So I think that there's a lot of where to say one thing that dictates something else. I have concerns about that, but I think it's time for us to start looking, move forward, and to start looking to resume meeting in person, but I'm still allowing the capability to the greatest extent possible. That makes sense. Thank you, Madam Chair.
It does. Thank you, Lou. Kurt?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm going to kind of echo what Lou's saying here with the moving forward with the hybrid model. I don't have a particular time frame on when I think this should be implemented. I've been for a while now a proponent of a Zoom meeting hybrid, going in perpetuity beyond COVID, just because of the maybe for lack of selfish reasons, the easiness of being able to hop on a Zoom meeting. The last few months I've been able to go to a lot more meetings than I think I've ever have, because I can just I'm sitting in my shorts and I can take a lot of Zoom meetings. So even going past COVID, once this gets resolved or what have you, if it's still a possibility of having a hybrid model to allow more participation by people and more input from the community. But I also think we do need that in-person portion. That's why I'm really pushing for the hybrid model. Again, I don't have a time frame on when this should be implemented, but I still think Mike should go forward and secure that camera, because I'm sure we're not the first or the last town to look at purchasing this technology, and it will probably could be back ordered. So I think it's a reasonable price, and regardless of when it's going to be implemented, I think you should move forward with that purchase. Thank you.
Thank you. John?
Thank you. So I went through the document that Mr. Rosen prepared. And in my view, the cons are outweighing the pros in that document at this point. And he mentions the cleaning, the extra staff, and the size of the council chambers is small. So I'm not sure that a hybrid model at this point is going to be much better than what we're doing now. And the other thing is, we've been doing this now for 7 months. So I think the people that do participate are used to this technology, even though it can be kind of glitchy at times. I think people are used to it. But I would like to revisit it at the first of the year and take another look at it and see where we are with the virus and the pandemic, and take another look at it at that point. But I am for staying in this format, at least until the first of the year.
Okay. Steve, did you have more to add?
Yeah, I had one other comment. I might be finding the wrong attachment. Town Manager Rosen might have a better understanding, but in terms of the capital improvement public hearings that we kind of had with department heads, that would be the only area where I could see potentially a staging area to utilize a hybrid model, where we could just focus on, say, a public hearing or a meeting of just going over the capital improvement or capital budget plan for, say, public safety or public works, to review that and see how it works, where it's more limited and tends to be lower attendance, where the limited staff, it might just be a handful of council members that are comfortable with being in person, maybe one member of the relative department staff in attendance in person, and then allowing the rest to be available remotely. At least just going forward to have an idea of where we might try and have a phased-in approach. But again, I guess that's just where I was trying to find clarity in terms of our budget schedule. I think it's mid-October is a capital review meetings. December 7th is submitting the capital improvement plan to the council.
Mhm.
So January 7th is department head submit budget to the manager.
Yep.
February is public hearings. So yeah, just correct me if I'm wrong with that schedule, or
That's correct.
Meetings that we could. Okay.
That's right.
That's where I could see as a potential gauging area to explore a hybrid model, is where we allow for limited public attendance, but primarily try and see how a hybrid model works in terms of obtaining the software and physical materials, such as dividing shields, the owl camera, to allow for a blend and see how it works and whether or not it's successful or has too many challenges for our community.
Can I just respond to that? Actually, that's so.
Yes.
The February public hearing that might make sense because of, like you said, it's after the new year. Maybe we'll see where we're at that point. Generally, I mean, I've been through one cycle now fully, so I think we had a couple of people show up for the Capitol hearing last year, but it doesn't get so overcrowded that we might necessarily need to do signups. However, we might still want to try it out just to see how that works, where you can only have, let's say, 5 members of the public in person maximum, but Unlimited can join us remotely. So you'd only have to sign up ahead of time if you planned on coming in person. Now, if we did get 6 or 7 people want to come, what we could do also is have, one person in, one person out type of a thing, so that we never go above the capacity limitation. But these are the things that I've talked with my staff about, who's going to monitor that during a meeting, and perhaps by February we'll be ready to do that. Yeah,
and I was going to add that there is sort of a potential queue area in terms of the open space adjacent to the council chambers, where there's sort of those benches that could provide 6-foot barrier markers, or someone could feasibly stand in line or stand at queue to either speak or potentially utilize electronic resources to have the meeting, an additional video resource displaying the meeting outside of the chambers. But that was just my initial thought in terms of hybridized models. It might work better for the mid to early winter months, where we're doing certain budgetary discussions and just seeing how the software works and the load and capacity, in terms of if the Wi-Fi goes down or someone's connection disappears, how they can respond rapidly to getting online via, cell tower service to be still an active participant.
What I fear happening too is if we have people that just show up and don't schedule ahead of time, I don't know that you can necessarily turn them away because they have a right to speak at the public hearing. What you could do is say, you can't be here physically, but do you have a phone? You can call in. It's going to seem silly that they're standing there. Why can't I participate? But we haven't ironed that out yet about what would happen in that scenario. The other thing too, I wanted to note that the room itself, the chambers, we are not going to be putting plexiglass in. That was an earlier idea that I had vetted and met with good, people saying that they didn't like the way it looked or doesn't do anything. So we decided not to go the plexiglass route, and instead we've mapped out how we can have 5 counselors or whatever board, 5 people around the dais, plus having a 6th and a 7th person at those smaller desks that separate out. And then, so you'd have 7 people around the dais, and then you'd have to make up the difference with audience chairs. We would reduce the number of chairs in the audience probably by like 90% and just leave 5 to 10 chairs there. So that's what we would do.
Okay, no, I appreciate that. Thank you, Town Manager Rosen. I'm also Council or Chairman Minuccio.
So for me, I'd like to point out that ease of attending a meeting is not equity. I have had lots of people tell me in the last couple of weeks that I've talked to that they haven't been coming to the meetings because they can't. They either don't have a computer, especially older people, they don't know how to work it, they don't understand the Zoom, they're struggling with that. And everything else. There are some people that we know that regularly attended meetings in person that we have not seen since March. I have no idea what's going on with them because they can't figure out how to get onto these online things. So not everybody has the computer or the knowledge to log on. We have had a big uptick in people participating, but I think we could still accomplish that with a hybrid model across the board. We can have people who want to be in there in chambers and use the OWL as a opportunity to have us on screen still and still be using Zoom. I'm curious to see what's going to come of the governor's response or what the executive order would look like. But at some point, we do need to get back to being in-person meetings. There is a big ease here of doing it from home. You know, we don't have to go anywhere. We don't have to, you know, worry about a lot of other things. We can just log on from our home and do it. I do have concern, as you had said, Mike, if people are making sure that people know only X amount of people can be in person. If somebody wants to come to a meeting, that we would have to try to find a way to get information out to them that they would have to sign up, or if the room is full, they won't be able to come in, kind of a thing. But having a hybrid meeting gives us the best of both worlds in doing that. You can have people who still can log in from home if they want to, and people who can be there in person if they're challenged with the computer or internet or anything like that. So it looks like overall here, kind of split, a little more towards the waiting until the end of the year to figure everything out. I think that's kind of where I kind of got most people here, is waiting until the end of the calendar year. But I think, Mike, you were saying that the OWL is backlogged anyway, so we're not going to be able to get that in anytime soon.
Correct. And I think there's a value. So one thing I thought about was if you were to buy $2,000 worth of plexiglass and the pandemic ended tomorrow, now we're stuck with all this plexiglass forever. Whereas with the OWL camera, we'll always find a use for it. And it's only half the price of the plexiglass, which is $1,000. So it's going to be $1,000. So we can use that for meetings in the future, and it's portable. You can take it to the library program room. You can take it to the wherever, high school. But you want somebody responsible to make sure to that it travels with a staff person. It doesn't go where it's not supposed to.
I'm definitely in favor of the OWL. From what I've seen of it with Coventry and that, I think it works well, and it pairs well with Zoom. So it's easy enough to have that there. I think that is good. I'm still kind of formulating, so go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, just one other question, just based off of experience for other community events. It's obviously more medically inclined, but whenever I've gone for a blood donation at St. Matthew's, before I can even really enter the common area, someone has to come to me to do a temp check via digital thermometer to the forehead. Is that something we're going to be considering for active participants or members of the public, or even counselors that wish to attend in person? Do we have the equipment in place to give a temp check? And if they fail that temp check, do we have to say, if you're, let's say 98.6 is the minimum or the maximum, and they're 99.2, are we going to say, you can't enter the chambers, we need you to participate remotely? Or is there a different policy in place for that? I guess that's one concern I have in terms of potential symptoms of either fever, flu, or COVID in terms of heightened temperature, whether or not we have thermal temperature scanners in place or available for a staffer or someone to check before entering a common area like the council chambers.
I would think that would go back to, like, they're not doing temp checks for the kids at school and that you're supposed to do those checks before you kind of come in thing. I don't think we would need to have somebody there to take everybody's temperatures, but that's me, Mike.
So John Lytell actually was good enough that he just texted me that we do have some thermometers, or I'm not sure how many, John, but they're available. However, we're not checking temperatures at the moment for people that are coming into town hall. Again, now we're talking having a staff person doing that, pulling them. So talking specifically the night meetings. So if they're like, let's say it's me for the council meeting, so I'm going to check somebody in, but I also got to run over here and advise you. So I would have to, yeah.
No, I apologize. I should have prefaced that with asking whether or not that's a regular practice of Coventry or Ellington for their hybrid model, or if I think as Chairman Nuccio said, it's sort of a self-regulated check before entering in, similar to the school system.
For the meeting I attended in Ellington, they do not do temperature checks. And in fact, they don't, once you're seated inside Ellington's town hall, you can remove your mask. Coventry, they do not do a temperature check. Masks are optional. Some people keep them on, some don't. And you wipe down your own area. They don't have a custodial crew do it. So the temperature checks are not done by either of those towns either.
Okay, no, that is very good to know. And additionally, do we have motion sensor stanchions in place or available for sanitizers that could be transported from one area of the town hall to another, in terms of, say there's one near a High Point entry area, would we move it for the evening to the entryway of a council chamber for people that wish to have it there to walk in, sanitize their hands, or have a self-sanitized like wipe area to wipe their chair and grab a wipe before leaving, sort of situation? I'm just curious if you've seen that with Ellington or Coventry, or how Tolland would deal with that.
I think we could work out the nuance to it. From Coventry, they have a jar of Lysol wipes when you walk in, and you can pull one as you walk in to wipe down your area, your seat, or your desk if you're sitting at the table. I don't know that people necessarily grab one on the way out to wash their hands as well. Definitely sanitizing stations, though. I mean, we have them throughout town hall. Okay. I'm not 100% sure if they're portable. I mean, if it's something, sanitizer is quite readily available now, not like it was back in March. So we can certainly put a bottle of sanitizer in the room and make sure it's kept full.
Okay, no, and I guess just the final comment or question is, and this might focus more on Chief Lytell, but maybe also for you, Mike, in terms of the stockpile of active PPE and sanitizing equipment. Do we have enough that if we go to a hybridized or in-person model at the end of this calendar year or the beginning of the next calendar year, would we see ourselves at risk of limiting accessibility to first responders that would need it?
I think John just popped back on. I'm not sure if he wants to answer in terms of the stockpile we have. I know for Public Works, though, we do have a good room full of equipment and PPE that we could use. So I'm not concerned about going through all of our supply of sanitizer. Lysol wipes are a lot harder to find everywhere. I mean, even personally, they're hard to find. So I'm not sure how much we have on that. Maybe John, are you aware?
I did put some off to the side specifically for voting or these type of events, but they're not medically grade, but we are prepared if you need something.
Okay, no, that is really good to know. I mean, I think it was recently announced that they're utilizing a former Costco location in Manchester, which isn't too far away from us geographically, as a PPE distribution center, but just making sure that, if we're going to switch gradually towards that hybridized model at any point at the end of this fiscal year, calendar year, or the next calendar year, that we aren't putting ourselves at risk of having a low supply or having to question who's going to get what and who's prioritized for need in terms of day-to-day staff versus special meeting purposes.
So I tend to agree with what you said about Coventry. I think we can all wipe down our own areas. I don't think we would need to do extra cleaning crews for this. Brenda?
Yes, Brenda Felucci. So with the OWL purchase, are we just looking at one, or are we looking at possibly two? Because if we're taking a look at eventually getting our boards and commissions hybrid, there are days that more than one group will meet. And how do we accommodate those when there's double meetings? I mean, if there's only one owl available, just like there's only one space available, if there's going to be a shortage, do we need to look ahead to possibly having more than one?
It's a good question. I mean, obviously there's $1,000 each, and I'm not sure if the prices have gone up since they've been flying off the shelves. You're right that the owl, that camera is a big part of how you make hybrid meetings work. Right now, the only way we can probably do it is in the council chambers. So going back to the point that you can only have one board meeting a night, and we have almost every night of the week, we have multiple boards who are meeting. So that's why we would need to set the rules about who's going to be doing this. You may only have, maybe it's only the council and the Board of Ed and maybe planning and zoning as the elected boards, and then everybody else has to stay on Zoom. I'm not proposing this. I'm just saying that's probably something that we need to consider so that the larger boards or the elected boards can meet hybridly, and the other ones can stay on Zoom.
All right, and then my other comment is I believe these meetings, even though they're on Zoom, they are still on TV, correct? So
yeah.
who is not computer literate can still turn on the TV and watch us. And we still have been receiving not just emails, but handwritten letters into the town council. So there's still the possibility of someone who does not have a computer to stay connected and stay on top of and have a communication. Of course, it's not real time, but they still have the ability to communicate and watch what's going on with us. So that's my only comment there.
I don't get it on my TV. I do not get it. It's only on Comcast. It's not on mine. So it's not a channel that is accessible to everybody. I know several people who have Dish or other types of TV that do not get this. So they have to go online to get it. All right. So Mike, I guess for now with this, I don't think there were any other questions that you need to kind of go away with.
Steve has his hand up.
Just one other question. Sorry, my apologies. Steve Jones here with one other request or question, Mike, through you, Councilwoman or Chairman Nuccio, to Mike. Are we offering these options or doing sort of a anonymous poll to town staff to see what their preference is? Because as much as our elected official preference might be to be in person or not in person, we may not necessarily know the position or situation of each staff member in terms of susceptibility or high risk status, whether or not they could provide their anonymous input to these three options and say, if they had to be in attendance to a meeting for budgetary purposes or other purposes, which model they would prefer to continue serving under. Not necessarily pointing anybody out in particular, but I do see we do have two directors on the meeting right now, Lisa Hancock and Nancy Dunn. You know, in terms of how much we rely on either one of them for either human services or financial questions, they may have their own preferences to how we've been running over the past 6 to 8 months and where they'd like to be able to effectively service us in the next 3 to 5 months, depending on what model we go forward with. So sorry, I don't want to put anybody on the spot. I'd actually almost prefer this to be anonymous through possibly if it is available to directors or heads of each department to say, okay, our department would prefer option 2 or option 1 or option 3 in terms of public engagement.
We can look at that. That's a good idea.
Which I do appreciate you both being there. I'm sure there's some comfort in being at home, but at the same time, I'm sure you also would like to be asleep by now. And there's the potential that if we were in person, we would be more cognizant of time and be more efficient with the meeting. But again, I just wanted to kind of keep the staff in mind when we're going forward with meetings that if we were in person, we're more efficient, but if we're online, we're more respectful of their needs and their situations.
Okay.
So, Mike, there's your first discussion on the remote policy. Let
right.
us know on the OWL, and we'll get this back on an agenda coming up.
Good.
That gets us to 8.4, appointments to vacancies on various municipal boards and commissions.
So we do have some tonight. We have all the Library Foundation ones from earlier, and we also have a reappointment to Water System Advisory Committee, which is part of the Connecticut Water. It's a group that's run by them, so it's not a town board, but it's our liaison to that. So all of that's in your packet.
If there is no discussion, I'd entertain a motion to reappoint Catherine Farish, Kristen Morgan, Jan Rubito, and Daniela Titton to the terms of 10/31/2020 to 10/31/2022 to Tolland Public Library Foundation, as well as Eugene Cost to the Water System Advisory Committee for a term of 6/1/2020 to 5/31/2022.
This is Brenda Felucci. I second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Brenda?
Aye.
Sandra?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Lou?
Aye.
Kurt?
Aye.
I'm an aye, so that passes unanimously. Okay, that gets us to old business, discussion on feedback for the creation of a remote participation policy.
Okay, so Mike Rosen, town manager. I wanted to mention, so we've had this on 2 past agendas. This idea actually started prior to COVID-19. So we were talking about originally, how could we have a remote participation policy that works hand in hand with the Freedom of Information Act. We had drafted up a remote policy that I believe I based on a previous municipality I'd worked for. I'd put together a policy for them, and I tried to gear it towards Tolland, and obviously made it, tailored to our town. And I do have a revised draft for you in your packet tonight. There's a couple of yellow highlights that are portions that are decision points the council would need to make. For between this iteration and the next, we need to iron out some of these points. And I believe we also polled all of the chairpersons of the various town boards, as well as the staff of the boards that staff those boards, to find out whether they would be for or against or comment on the idea of having a remote participation policy. So those comments are baked into this version, this September 22nd version. I guess generally what I was looking for, we had put this on the agenda tonight to go hand in hand with the discussion we just had about reopening of night meetings. If you remember, one of the options had, if you do have in-person meetings but offer remote participation, as a alternate. Originally, just to put it again, it's kind of funny, 8 months later, we were talking about remote participation via telephone. Telephone, what's that? But now we're talking about perhaps using Zoom. So things have changed in the last 8 months. So I guess this draft I put together tonight has some the comments baked into it, and also has some decision points for the council to consider. So I don't know if you want to walk through them, or if you just want to do like a high level. I'm not sure what you guys want to do.
Anybody? Lou?
Thank you. This is somewhere I think that, given the fact that we've just sort of tabled the going into a hybrid model and other things, and that the foreseeable time being that we're going to be likely staying here on Zoom, this is something where, with all due respect, I think it's something that to give us a chance to go through the revision or the recommendation of Mr. Rosen, have him sort of give us a high level that he was about ready to prepare, and then table this for any further discussion until we have a chance to really sort of review it, hear, say, and mull things over. So that, because now that we're not pursuing a hybrid model or going back into live. I think this is sort of something that sort of take time, and that we could address in future meetings rather than trying to everything and move things along immediately. Right? Thank you.
Thank you, Lou. Kurt?
Thank you, Chairwoman Nuccio. I'm going to echo what Lou said. I think we should table this for now. I am very much in favor of a remote participation policy post-COVID, but we currently are still trying to figure out our COVID strategy. So I think this is something that should be revisited once we figure out what's going on with COVID and where we're going. I'm still very strongly in favor of it. So thank you.
Thank you, Kurt. Brenda?
Thanks, Brenda Flussi. I was going to echo all that. I just wanted to add one thing when we do consider this. Under section 4E, you were talking about pandemic sheltering. In my mind, I wanted to also take a look at emergency declarations. In case there's ever an emergency that we need to get together to talk about, but we physically can't get somewhere as a group, then, you know, like a storm, there's trees down and I can't get out of my driveway or something like that. An emergency declaration because of a storm or something to that effect might be something to consider too.
Thank you. I will add that.
John?
Thanks. I just, again, agreeing with what's already been said, like Mr. Rosen said, this goes hand in hand with the policy we just discussed. So I think we should revisit this once we figure out what we're doing with the remote policy. So I agree with tabling it for the time being.
Steve?
I'll just join the chorus in agreement, as well as seconding Councilor Felucci's comments on perhaps expanding that 4E to state inability to attend due to pandemic or emergency declaration response sheltering in the event that a road is closed off and the person can't physically get there without putting themselves at risk of bodily harm.
Okay, so we were not voting on anything right now. We were just having discussion. So I think with the majority here, we will look at the highlights, Mike, and if you want to make the changes to the other ones, we can then get this back on an agenda at a later date.
Yep. And also just consider that that new section 7 is, I forgot to mention it in my preamble, that's new due to COVID and works hand in hand with the policy we just talked about, but we'll get it on a future agenda.
Okay, perfect. 9.2, consideration of a resolution.
Lou has his hand up, I'm sorry.
Sorry, Lou?
No, and I would just say that nation would be is then while we're taking a look at it, if there's any specific issues or any specific things that we address, we could direct them to you, Madam Chair, and Mr. Rosen, so that they can be, so that he can take a look at those and possibly work those as he's moving this along.
Perfect. Any feedback, please provide it, and we'll make sure that it gets into the next iteration. All right, 9.2, consideration of a resolution for the creation of the Tolland Mental Health and Substance Use Advisory Task Force and the setting of a public hearing thereon for October 27th, 2020.
Okay, good evening, Mike Rosen, Town Manager. This item again has been brought up to several agendas in the past. This is the potential new task force that we've discussed several times. This draft mission statement that's in your packet tonight, I don't believe there were any edits to it, except I took off the draft to be sent to the Board of Ed. That was the language we used last time. This again needs to be done. If we do create the task force, it's actually creating a new town ordinance. So therefore you need a public hearing to be done on it before creating a new ordinance. So tonight's agenda item is to make any last minute edits to the resolution or to the draft mission statement. And if you're ready to do so, to set the public hearing for the next meeting. Again, there was no edits to it between drafts. So I don't know if there's anything that you would like to discuss from the previous draft.
Anybody have any questions? No. All right, then We need a motion to set the public hearing.
All right, I would, Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion that the Town Council schedule a public hearing on October 27th to discuss the creation of a mental health and substance use task force.
Lulu, second that.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Brenda?
Aye.
Cassandra?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye. Thank you.
John?
Aye.
Lou?
Aye.
Kurt?
Aye.
I'm an aye, so that passes unanimously. We'll have it on our next meeting as a public hearing item. And that gets us to 10, report of the town manager.
In light of the late hour, I just want to say two quick updates. So one on the hiring front, the Director of Administrative Services and I have met with a finalist candidate for the Senior Center Director position. So we met with them earlier today, and we are considering what to do next with that. So that's just to let you know about that. And also we have interviews for the Director of Planning position later in the week on Thursday. There were 2 applicants, and we are going to interview them on Thursday, the 15th, for that role, first round interview. The other update I wanted to mention was sort of covered earlier today about that special presentation we had on Thursday evening that was hosted by the library and moderated by me, which I enjoyed doing. I heard a couple people texting me and said, "You're a good moderator." I said, "Oh, thank you." The 3 professors, the 3 professors we had were phenomenal. The breakout sessions were very interactive, and people felt comfortable to say what they were thinking about, it could be a little bit difficult when you're talking about sensitive topics. The actual topic was, having to do with racial lenses and expanding your racial lens while promoting inclusion. So I felt like it was a good conversation. We tried something new. We did breakout rooms, and it worked very well. And we reconvened at the end and wrapped it all up. And I thought it was a nice discussion. And we definitely appreciate, first of all, the presenters, and second of all, that the library funded it. So thanks to all who attended. I think we had 40, I forgot what the highlight was, 45 maybe total people there, something like that, 40, 45. But it was a good showing. So thanks to everybody. And that's all I have for tonight.
Okay, that gets us to 11, adoption of minutes.
All right, I'm just pulling up the agenda here, trying to get to the top of the page. I was going to entertain a motion to adopt the minutes as laid out in 11.1 first. I know I actually wasn't in attendance, so I'll have to abstain from that. So I'll separate that before the other meeting minutes.
This is Brenda Felucci, I second. I think that's
any discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Brenda?
aye.
Cassandra?
Aye.
Steve?
Abstain.
John?
Aye.
Lou?
Abstain.
Kurt?
Aye.
I am an aye, so that passes.
All right, and then going forward, I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes as laid out in 11.2, 11.3, and 11.4.
This is Brenda Felucci, I second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Brenda?
Aye.
Cassandra?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Lou?
Aye.
Kurt?
Aye.
I am an aye, that passes. Correspondence to council.
Hi, Brenda Felucci here. We had residents share information about removing fluoride from school water, climate change, renewable energy, equity, and environment justice. We also received an invite from the Tolland Historical Society for a presentation tomorrow on the restoration of the bell and cupola on one of their buildings. We had a resident send in an email requesting 2 additional handicap spots at Cross Farms. We had a resident send in an email asking about the accessibility for the Scarecrow event that is on the green. We had a resident that was concerned about a comment that they considered vulgar by a planning and zoning member. And we had two more. We had an email from the Tolland Green Historical Society requesting things like a commitment to maintaining the museums on the green, requests to be included in town green events, an insurance suggestion, and request for a liaison. And then we had also received the email about our resident Edward Steer, who is receiving the Carnegie Medal for Extraordinary Act of Heroism. So those are all the correspondence we had.
Thank you. I am going to follow Mike's lead in light of the late time. I won't have anything tonight for my chairperson's report. Communications and petitions from council.
This is Brenda Felucci. The only thing I'd like to ask is that maybe we take the email about the Scarecrow event not being accessible and forward it to the group that planned the event, which I believe was the Permanent Celebration Committee. Did I get that right? Just so that, for their information, basically.
Yep.
And I'll just make one comment. The rec department had a event to do you send in a picture of your house for either fall or, Tolland Spirit, and we had one person win. I heard that one person who won took that gift card, bought gifts, certificates from an area restaurant, and donated them to Human Services. So they gave back to the community. And Human Services can use those at their discretion.
Steve?
Yeah, my only request was going to be through you to the town manager, a rough timeline of when the event we just held was going to be published for public viewing in terms of the racial lens, if that was possible. I know personally I did listen in on the event, but it was the day of a family member's birthday. So when I left, I was kind of listening while commuting from their location to my home. And I would have liked to have been able to view it more physically and be more engaged, but unfortunately I couldn't. So just wanted to keep tabs on when that might be polished and published.
I have some good news. It's up already. It's up. Good. On the on the library's website, on the library's page on the website, on the right-hand side under news and notices. You can view it right there, Steve.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Don't forget to bring your M&Ms.
I'll use a marker. I'm trying to lose weight.
Yeah, I just wrote down my colors. They left it up on the screen, so it was really easy.
Yeah. But otherwise, I guess as an aside too, I didn't mention it with the council reports for commissions, but with the use and increase of trail space, there has been an uptick in litter. I know for certain trail wardens or stewards, they've been encouraging people to kind of be mindful of their trash as they're utilizing spaces in an increased level. And I think that should fall as well into our parks and public areas that are maintained by DPW, is to kind of just be mindful of your trash and throw it away in the proper receptacles, or take it with you and return it to your own personal receptacles after visiting that area.
Okay, thank you. 15, public listed participation on any subject within the jurisdiction of the town council, 3-minute limit. If you're on a device, go to participants and raise your hand. If you're on the phone, it's *9. I think we have anybody. Oh, we do. Mr. Crickmore?
Good evening, Town Council. John Crickmore, 31 Cook Road. I just wanted to make a comment about the last subject that you guys were discussing, the remote meetings, and I don't know. I guess I'm disappointed in the fact that where Tolland is 8 months into this pandemic, when towns around us or towns throughout the state have been meeting hybrid remotely for months and months and months. Elected officials tell me that my son can go to school, but we're going to sit online for an hour and come up with excuses why we shouldn't meet remote, or what should we do, or we don't have a big enough room. how many schools are in this town? There's plenty of room. We have auditoriums. The schools are cleaned constantly. I mean, we're looking now at the earliest of being a year of being remote. And it reminds me of our state and our federal government where everybody's essential. Everybody's got to go to work, but the elected officials don't. They're going to, like, they want to stay home and be remote. I think it's crazy. And years ago, Tolland was the leader of all the cities around us. And in every subject in the last 5 years, and I'm not blaming anybody on this board or the town manager, this is just a culmination of years. We don't lead anymore. This town is behind the curve on everything from zoning regulations, planning regulations, to how we run our meetings, to, it just amazes me how far Tolland has seemed to go backwards. And we're going to tell everybody, send your kids to school, but we're going to come up with 50 different reasons why we can't have a remote a meeting in person or a hybrid meeting. And now we just kicked it down the road. So this will be next year. And I just think it's disappointing that we're like behind the curve in so many aspects, so many areas. And I don't know. It's just, I don't know. It's disheartening, I guess, that where we're at. So I figured I needed to say something. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? No. Okay. Steve?
If there's no other public comment, entertain a motion to adjourn at 10:57 p.m.
Lou,
Go ahead, Lou.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Brenda?
Aye.
Cassandra?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Lou?
Aye.
Kurt?
Aye.
I'm an aye. That is it. Thank you, everybody. Have a great night.
Good night.
Take care. Have a good night.
Good night.